You want to make a motion to fast track? Like you said, I want to make a motion
to approve the consent items.
approve the consent items.
And you'll say, is there any abstentions? And Richie, you're going to just abstain altogether from 4-1? Yeah, I think that's
Instead of
easier.
bringing it out.
Just say, yeah, I'll abstain.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna abstain.
Oops. Okay. Are we on air? Okay, we are on air. Thank you, on air man. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for your patience. We are going to start. Appreciate everyone coming out in the foul weather. It took us 16 minutes to come across the rainy parking lot. That's why we were late. That's a joke. So welcome to the March 9th, 2023 Windsor Unified School District regular board meeting. Very glad that you're here. Glad that we have a good showing. We do have a pretty full agenda. We have some adjustments to the agenda. But before we get in that, we will do a roll call. Ms. Cox.
Bill Adams.
Here.
Malinali Lopez.
Here.
Stephanie Ahmad.
Here.
Rich Carnation.
Here.
Paul Cagano.
Here.
And Jackson Caligari will be late.
Okay. If we'd rise for item 2.2, our flag salute to be led by Trustee Ahmad. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Superintendent Decker, is there a report out of closed session, and is it me that's doing it?
There is, and it's all you, Bill.
Okay. We have three different items in closed session regarding the personnel assignment order. The board took action to release an instructional assistant from Brooks Elementary and one from Cali-Calmec Language Academy. 5 board members voted yes. There were no votes and no abstentions. Also in resolution 2023-9, that was 2023-8, Jen. for release of temporary certificated employees. In closed session, the board acted to authorize the district superintendent or our designee to notify temporary certificated employees, long-term subs, Spanish teacher, an elementary school teacher, and TOSA pursuant to Education Code 44954B, that they would not be reemployed in the 2023-2024 school year. The motion was made by trustee Ahmad, seconded by trustee Corgano. The vote was 4 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention. We also had what I will just share from my personal view is the worst part about being on the Board of Trustees. We had 2 expulsion cases. In expulsion case number 020823, the first matter, board, that we heard, is there a motion for approval of the findings of fact as presented in that?
I make a motion that we approve those findings of
Okay,
fact.
first motion by trustee Carnation.
Second.
Okay, second by trustee Corgano. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. And in consideration of student expulsion 020823, is there a motion to uphold the principal's recommendation for expulsion?
Yes, I thought, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
And I'll second.
okay, a motion by trustee Carnation and a motion by, or second by trustee Ahmad. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that passes 5-0. With regard to student case 021023, is there a motion for approval of the findings of fact?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, trustee Ahmad.
Second.
And trustee Corgano for the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes 5-0. And is there a motion to uphold the principal's recommendation for expulsion in case number 021023?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, trustee Carnation.
Second.
Okay, thank you, trustee Corgano. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we're going to move to item 3.1, adjustment to the agenda. We have a few. The first is item 5.1, the discussion action item report by the Windsor Education Foundation. I understand from an update from the superintendent that we are going to push that to our April board meeting. Okay, so that will not be heard today. Our student board member, Jackson Calgary, we congratulate and wish him well at a scholarship event this evening. We are going to take his report 3.4. Jen, if you would watch when he gets here, and wherever we are in the agenda, whatever that item is, we'll slide Jackson's report in thereafter, and I've communicated with him about that. Any other adjustments to the agenda that board members have? Any from the superintendent or the cabinet? Okay. With that, then, we will go, and thank you very much for your patience. Many of you may be here for this. Celebrating Success, Principals Zucconi and Ziegler will be celebrating activities at Brooks Elementary and Windsor Middle School. And I don't know if we have a script for that, but I see a lot of students here, and that's cool. Yes, go ahead. Thank you. Let's have an interpretive dance. No.
I can talk loud. I was a teacher. Test. All right, perfect. All right, it's so exciting to be back in front of you and here to celebrate some success. There's lots of success. If you are curious, you can follow us on Facebook. Lots to see there about everything going on. I decided to change it up this year a little bit. I decided to do a presentation that solely includes students. I asked the student body at Brooks to share with me through a Google form their personal success story for this year. I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. All right, so I asked the whole student body, and I gave them, asked them, what's your greatest success this year? Please share with me all your details, and please share with me the name of the adult or adults that contributed to your success. I selected 6, 2 from each grade level, to come tonight to present to you. They are a variety of learners with different needs in the classroom and very different gifts. I've also invited their teachers to stand with them. So for the first one, I'd like to invite my 2 third graders, Evelyn Wolf in Mrs. Allen's class and Charlie Mendoza in Mrs. Kern's class. And just a quick note, Evelyn mentioned that there were 4 very special adults at school that contribute to her success. One is Miss Marlene, our counselor. One is Miss Mary, our school secretary. The other is Renee, our school custodian. And then Mrs. Allen, her teacher. And then for Charlie, he mentioned Mrs. Kearns, his teacher. So I'll let Evelyn speak first. And I set this up just for you guys.
Well done.
Hi, my name is Evie. I'm in 3rd grade at Brooks Elementary. My success story this year is about learning how to be empathetic for my friends and how to connect with others. During COVID, it was hard to connect with others because it was all online. This year, I have a great opportunity and I'm able to connect with others and be more empathetic. Some examples of when I learned how to be more empathetic are when my best friend's cat died. I was able to feel with her instead of for her because my dog died when I was little. I know how bad it feels to lose someone or an animal. The adults at Brooks helped me by showing empathy lots of times. One example of how they made me feel better is when I had been sick for a while and I had a hard time going to school. I want to thank the school staff who helped me achieve my greatest success this year.
And this is Charlie.
Hi, my name is Charlie Mendoza, and I am a 3rd grader in Mrs. Kern's class. And here is my story. On the first day of school, I was worried about making friends and reading because I was not a good reader or good at making friends. But then I made my first friend, Corbin. Plus, read more and made even more friends. Do you know how? Well, I had great people to help me, like my awesome teacher, Mrs. Kearns, and my mom, Noemi Valdivia. They helped me practice the words, and I achieved it. And now I love to read. Thank you.
All right, and next we have Zacchaeus Woodson. He named his teacher, Ms. Brown, as the person who helped him achieve his success, and then Eliza Alvarez from Mrs. Campbell's. And if those teachers would come and stand with them, that would be great.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Hello, my name is Zacchaeus Woodson, and this is my teacher, Miss Brown. I'm a 4th grader at Brooks Elementary School. My greatest success this year was learning multiplication. It was very hard. It took me a while to get the concept of it. I think it took me 7 months or so to get it. This year, I'm learning how to do bigger multiplication problems, like double, triple, and multi-digits problems. It took me a long time to learn all of this, and I thank my teacher, Miss Brown, and my mom, Courtney, for helping me master this 4th and 5th grade skill.
Hi, my name is Elisa Alvarez, and one of my greatest successes here was learning to fit in. When I first came here, I didn't really fit in a lot. I didn't have many friends. But my teacher, Ms. Campbell, she helped me very much. She helped me by fitting in and understanding lessons more. One reason that she helped me was she helped me when I didn't have friends. She introduced me to a lot of new people, and I felt great during that. And she was a great person and didn't judge me for me. So I hope that one day I can repay Miss Campbell like she helped me.
All right. And Evie Nice, come on up. And is Layla here? I don't think Layla made it. So Evie is from Mrs. Hirschnitz's class, and she named Ms. Hirschnitz and her parents as the adults that helped her achieve her success this year.
And Ms. Zacconi and everyone who's speaking, and your parents and your teachers, don't anybody go anywhere because we're going to want you to all come up here and get a photograph taken with us before you go. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Evie Neese, and for my success story, my biggest success was making a PIP. In my classroom, we create PIPs. A PIP is a personal interest project that lets you choose a topic to learn and explore. For my second PIP, I chose to do painting a sunset because I love to do it and I thought it would be really cool to share with others. As we work on our projects, we create a website where we record our progress. When we are done, we present our websites to the class. The homepage of the website is an introduction to who I am and what I'm going to be doing for my project. The expert tab of my website is where I present tips and tricks on how to do my topic. I included multiple YouTube links that I found helpful when learning this skill. The skill tab is a description of what I learned and a reflection of the learning process. The product tab shows my video of how to paint a sunset. I edited the video using CapCut. After we are all done presenting, we hold a class market. Everyone is allowed to sell products that shows a skill of theirs. For the market, I made 25 paintings and 18 of them were sold. After the market was over, I had $160 of our class money in my wallet. This project made me feel really good about myself because it let me see that people liked what I am doing. This project made me feel proud about what I can now accomplish at school.
Wow.
And those are just 6 success stories. There are hundreds more, and we just want to say thank you for your hard work in supporting us in the work that we do over there on Natalie Drive every day.
So before we have all of you who presented and your teachers and parents and everybody, any comments, questions from the board?
I'll just make a comment. Wow. As a 4th grade teacher, 5th grade teacher, I really appreciate the work that you all do, and to hear it from the students' mouths, it makes me proud of the work that you all are doing.
Thanks.
So keep it up.
Thank
you. My oldest grandson is at Brooks. And when I'm watching all of you, I'm thinking, man, how lucky my grandson is to be surrounded by such awesome kids. And it was pretty good. Now, I have to say something because Bill kind of hit on it too. I can't remember the young man's name.
Zacchaeus.
The one with the little dog?
The multiplier.
Zacchaeus. You're awesome. Yeah, go ahead, stand up. Hey, I used to be shy, and I remember before my wrestling matches when I was your age, I used to get so nervous I'd throw up.
Oh.
And I saw that you were having a little bit of nerves before you came up. And you did a great job at talking. And then I used to have challenges with math too. And to hear you be nervous and then see how you overcome your challenges and with math, it's your future is bright. And then I noticed, I think this is what President Adams noticed, when you were done, you were so relieved you took a bow 3 times. The showmanship was excellent. I give you a straight A on that. You know, every once in a while we all hear just terrible things sometimes out there going on everywhere else. And it's just so cool that we have such awesome things going on here in our town. And you kids, you guys make everything worthwhile. I love that every one of you that I remember hearing mentioned how your parents were helping you. And you guys need to be really thankful that your parents are helping you, because not everybody has that option. So go home tonight, like we always tell our kids at the end of practice, go home and tell your mom you love her. And so to all you kids, make sure when you go home tonight, tell your mom you love her. And if dad's there too, you can give him a wink. But anyhow, all you kids did awesome. It was great. Thank you.
I wanted to say something. So I just wanted to say that those words were also beautiful and so heartfelt. It really made my evening tonight. So thank you to all the children that were here. I actually wrote down your names. So I believe it's Evie, Charlie, Alicia, Evie, and also Zacchaeus. Is that right?
Yep.
All the names. So I just want to say you are so welcome in this district. I hope that you now feel comfortable here. For those of you who shared that you didn't feel comfortable or shy or that you didn't have a friend, I hope that you feel that this is your home. So welcome.
Now you got a room full of friends. So everybody come on down who's those 5 students, everybody's who related to them. Let's get a photo. Mr. Decker, come on up here with us. You guys come right in the front here.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Great job. And you got a cool hat. Very sensible too. Come on in, make space. Bring the puppy. There you go, buddy. Hello. Charlie, well done. Come on, you get the kids in front so we can see them. Oh my goodness. And big sisters encouraging. Well done.
It's all good. It's all good.
We good? Okay. Yeah. All right, come on up. What a well-behaved dog. You didn't-
Just like his boss.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm so short.
All right.
Just like Disney, the animal always.
Good
gets
job. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good job. Well done. Good job.
She's very nervous.
Wow, you did super. Thanks for starting everybody out. Charlie, well done. Thank you, sir. Good job. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
You shake hands?
No.
Nope.
So students, teachers, and families, thank you, thank you, thank you. When we are usually late, it's because we are doing something troublesome across the way. That brightened up what was an otherwise rather dark start to an evening tonight. So thank you so much. Ms. Ziegler, you're up.
I might need the low table for the microphone again.
You want a dog?
Where are we?
Her celebrating.
Good evening.
We're doing
I think
double
there's a
tap.
slide to come up. So tonight, I know that your meeting is going longer. I will keep this somewhat brief. And I think our camp coordinator is here tonight, Janet Mulligan. And what we want to celebrate is that we were able to pull off and have our 6th grade students go to a 3-day, 2-night experience at Alliance Redwoods. It didn't start out that way because it was quite a huge expense and anticipating the number of scholarships we were going to need. And we had incredible support and interest from a group of parents to really pull this off and make it happen for their students. And in doing this, they made it happen for many students. We had, I believe, over 130 students that attended the 6th grade camp, and it's about 65% of our 6th grade population. I invited the parents here, but with the rain and their children, I don't know that did any of them make it tonight. So I've put their names up here just to highlight the cooperation. We had a meeting with all of them. They brainstormed many ideas to do fundraising, and we don't have volunteer coordinators at our campuses anymore, so it's difficult to have the staff time to really do the kind of fundraising that we needed. And they took it on. They did donation letters to businesses. They organized dine and donates and just really put their hearts out. There were bake sales at Oliver's, and they took additional donations. And so I do want to thank all of them. You'll see the mention of C-STAR at the end because Nicole Gross is one of the board members of C-STAR. And so she was able to partner with that organization to allow the donations to be tax deductible because they're a nonprofit. And so that was, really amazing. It really linked them with the community to benefit the students. And we were able to scholarship any student who wanted to go and couldn't pay. So it was awesome. So I'm very indebted to them for really coming forth and making it happen. I hope every year they have 6th graders who will go on to 7th grade. I hope every year that we have parents who are willing to be involved with the school in that way. And I want to thank Janet Mulligan. Stand up.
All right, stand up. My line for-
Janet says, Janet's a sixth grade, primarily language arts and social studies teacher, and she is our science camp coordinator. And she launched some of the initial fundraising that we did a bowl and donate with the bowling company. Do you have any words to say? Oh, you'll have to raise this.
Oh, okay. Got a few inches on you. So I am so glad that we were able to take this trip. This class was in third grade during the shutdown. They've missed out on so much, and they're a great group. So I was really glad that they were able to take the trip. There were so many kids that were so excited. There was one boy, I don't really know him, but he said to me, "I'm having a really good time." And we were just laughing in our cabin. And I don't know why I was laughing, but everybody was having such a great time. And then the other thing was, after I got home, we went out to Flagship on the town green. And I was wearing this, and one of the workers back there who, I don't know who he is, but I mentioned that I had just come back from science camp, and he goes, "Science camp, that was the best part of the middle school." And he's like 30. So, so it makes a difference. It makes a lasting difference for these kids. And I was really glad that we were able to go and that the weather held for us. Got lucky on that one. So thanks again.
Any comments?
And thanks to the district office staff who helped us kind of weather the whole process of getting through putting this back into an overnight trip.
Yep. And I want to acknowledge and thank Principal Ziegler and Ms. Mulligan. Thank you for your persistence. There were some twists and turns in getting to yes, but we got to yes, and that was the important thing. And I think we learned some things to watch out for, and I'm very glad that we were able to get it done in a collaborative way to have it happen for the students before the year was out. So thank you both for helping carry the day on that. Any other comments from any board members? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Well done. Okay, we will now go to item 3.3, public comment on any non-agenda items. During this period, according to the Brown Act, the board may not consider or comment or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. We ask that public comment be spoken in the microphone in the podium. You'll have as allowed for 3 minutes. In light, if we could sort of take a little housekeeping test, in light of events in Montgomery High School and in Santa Rosa last week, are there folks who would like to address that safety or anything that sort of is related to that? Okay, I'm seeing 4 or 5. Okay, thank you. Is there folks who would like to address something other than that topic? Okay, let's have you two that put your hands up to address other than sort of the safety topic, and then we will go to the safety issues and history stuff. So if you have something other than Montgomery safety, community resource officers, et cetera, please come on up at this time. I saw 2 hands go up, so. Here, it looks like you're first with the hat. There you go. Hello. It's good to see you.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Julie Raven Smart, and I was one of the original 9 teachers that started Windsor High School. Yeah, and I taught theater arts. And I wanted to share something with you. In fact, it was so important to me that I had to come home and invite you to this. About a year ago, a book was published where some women had interviewed and collected writings from survivors of school shootings. And the name of the book is called If I Don't Make It, I Love You, which was an actual text from a student who was hiding at a school shooting. The book, as you can imagine, is very difficult to read. There's writings, photographs, mostly from students, parents, etc. Up in Healdsburg, about a year ago, the artistic director at their theater took upon himself to contact a bunch of their playwriters and create an on-stage small version of the book. So instead of like 2 acts and intermission, it's just 1 act. And what I love about the format is it's small cast, a small set. In fact, the audience is on stage with the actors, and it's only about the length of one act play. I've read all the scripts. And after that, there's an audience discussion. And I immediately thought, wouldn't it be neat if one of you guys were there at one or two of those performances? I'm designing the set for it, and I just had to come and say, you really should come and see it. It's a lot easier than reading the book. You'll gain a lot of insight, especially from a student perspective. And it opens in 2 weeks, and I'm actually was painting the set today. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to Jackie Alejos, who's been helping me with some little pieces to help with the set dressing of the play. But I wanted to come home and tell you about it, and I've got flyers if you'd like them.
We'd love to see flyers. Thank you so much, Julian. It's wonderful to see you again. I saw your name and stuff about you when I was over watching the Alice in Wonderland performance at the theater, and so there's still a legacy of your work at our high school. Thank you very much. Ma'am, you had raised your hand. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Following that is hard. I would like to speak about an assembly that was held at Brooks on Wednesday in regards to a new rule implemented for. Sorry.
The microphone
Is it?
is it on?
I don't know. It's really close. Now, can you hear me? Mandy Storms. And I'm sorry, I'm getting my voice back as well. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to speak on an assembly that was held. My daughter is in 3rd grade at Brooks Elementary. It was held on Wednesday, and a new rule was implemented that the students were presented with this rule first. Parents found out about it from our students, that there is to be no touch whatsoever at school. This includes hugs, handshakes, tapping on the shoulder, and the consensus of most of at least my friends' children is that they will be first detention, then suspension, then expulsion for touching, even if it's your friend, which seems a lot. So this is not as simple as we don't like this rule. I'm frustrated that I get most of my information about Brooks from my 8-year-old. And within the first week of school, my daughter was actually accused by adults of something far beyond her character, and both her and my objections were initially dismissed. It wasn't until I had investigated with other parents and come to the school threatening to unenroll my daughter if they did not listen did I get clear information of the situation and had my daughter's name cleared. At that time, I discussed proactive communication with Mrs. Zucconi and thought we were on the same page. Additionally, I signed up to volunteer during lunch for all grades on Fridays, which is when I actually get to see firsthand how kids interact with each other and adults at Brooks. There have been a number of issues that have been shared with parents either initially or exclusively via the students. This is both reliable and unreliable because as parents, we can see how it was perceived by our children, but we also know that it may be slightly inaccurate. Based on the majority of kids' feedback following the assembly, the information we received is more the former than the latter. If bullying and violence at Brooks is not an emergent issue, this rule is overkill at best. If bullying and violence is emergent, then I'd like to know why we are just hearing about it now and from our kids before the adults. But in this case, the rule is negligibly effective for the real problem. Had I received outreach from Brooks asking for suggestions or even asking parents to participate in a forum to combat bullying, I would have gladly joined. Had I received outreach that this rule was being considered a solution, I would have returned thoughtful feedback. Had I received an ask for parent help and involvement to support Brooks staff in this crisis, I would have been there. Instead, I have a 3rd grader who thinks she will get detention or even expelled for high-fiving a friend. My friend's daughter claims a staff member explained the rule's reasoning as because boys take it too far, referring to any contact. I can personally attest to questionable commentary by staff that I have overheard at lunchtime firsthand, and unfortunately believe this gross statement was made. The same student witnessed a staff member yank another child away mid-attempt to hug and thus touch their friend, and this was before the assembly. It cannot be expected that parents sit and wait for the school to respond when the majority of kids come home and report something of this magnitude, especially when it's something like a planned assembly. And in that, I'm referring to the statement that was made today, this evening, from Brooks. Touch is taught as a form of camaraderie and a high five, empathy and a hug, and safety in hand holding. yet we are now to punish the very things teachers spent years promoting. Not to mention, touch is a key aspect of human socialization. We are not born knowing the rules of touch, and they have certainly evolved and include a level of subjection. It is not unreasonable, however, to accept that there will be some level of disagreement at school as students learn boundaries and communication. Even between friends, there will be miscommunication, and teaching kids how to resolve problems and do better next time should be the priority. For those that are truly bullying, even the recent PR response does not apply. The school's response mentions touch between friends going too far, but bullying is not predominantly between friends. A boy I often care for, who is present tonight, has been bullied at Brooks from week 1 and is often removed from school by my friend, his mother, when he calls asking to go home because he feels unsafe at school. Unfortunately, this is her only response because when the bullying was reported, including when the boy was physically assaulting my friend's son, both kids were punished equally. This policy only rewards the bully who is looking to harm their victim. Even if the bully is in detention too, they have won. This is not how the world works. So why is that what we're teaching our kids? If my daughter is assaulted on campus, she has my absolute approval and respect to defend herself. In no way am I condoning violence in general, but do we not encourage women to learn self-defense as adults as well? If a girl pins my son on the ground to kiss him, should he not be free of punishment if he shoves her off of him? I offer this last example because it actually happened between children I know on the Brooks campus. Regardless of the gender ratio in the bullying events, gender is not a defining factor. Bullying, yes, takes many forms and is complex and absolutely deserves attention and response. This rule is an out that will lead to more punishments, and the recipients will not be the worst offenders. For 3 years, I raised and now help raise my special needs nephew, and he was severely violent when he came to me. And he even found joy in pain he caused other children and animals. But with the support of therapists, medications, school staff, which is amazing at Maddie Washburn, and strict structure and discipline from myself, he has become a high-functioning member of his class at Brooks. He is still verbally bullied quite a bit and unfortunately has been provoked by the mainstream students to then physically respond. And while he receives a punishment, the provoking parties do not because they didn't touch. This is how we breed manipulation.
Could you wrap up, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. I myself was threatened with rape in high school. I was told this boy was going to rape me on the public transportation bus I took home. And I took my fishing knife to school for protection. A kid I confided in told on me and I was suspended for a week. Nothing could be done about the threat because it was all on AOL instant messages and gone. And later on, he came back to campus and stood at the window of my classroom and just stared at me, pointing at me, smiling. Nothing could be done. I can actually imagine what it feels like to go to school prepared to defend yourself. And it all starts small, leads to the big events like Montgomery Highs. And Brooks is still small. They have a chance to breed compassion and empathy, but also teach consequences. Grouping the kids who are doing the latter best into the punishment for those who aren't is not the answer. Brooks clearly needs a new game plan, both in bullying prevention and response in their communication with parents. Schools want parents to have their backs. Then we need proactive communication so that we can be with you on offense, not on defense and damage control. Thank you.
Thank you for your heartfelt comments. So there were a number of you that had put your hand up when I asked about the sort of other general category. Whoever, yes, ma'am. Sure. Yeah, we can't see him behind the microphone, but where'd the table go? Bring Annette Zacconi's table over. Yep, if you could please speak into the microphone, sir. Hello.
My name is Declan, and I'm in 3rd grade, and I go to Brooks. And this happened at recess or after school a couple weeks ago. I got called the N word, and I got called the B word, and I also got called the P word. can't think of anything else.
Thank you for stepping up and courageously talking to us. I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you for coming tonight. Yeah, I see our Mayor Reynosa is here. Thank you. I would, if we might, Mayor Reynosa, I see our student body president is here. If we could perhaps start with President Miranda, and then we'll go to Mayor Reynosa. And then for those of you who want to speak on public comment after those two, we would welcome any comments that you have to say.
Good evening. My name is Ava Miranda, and I'm the ASB president at Windsor High School.
And I'm Alejandra Martinez, the current ASB historian and the incoming ASB president for the 2023-24 school year.
So you guys will definitely be seeing her next year. We thank you for your time. The following is a statement from the Windsor High School Associated Student Body in regards to last week's tragic event at Montgomery High School. Windsor High School students feel deeply sympathetic to the struggles at Montgomery High School. The loss of a peer is a pain that seems insurmountable, and the strength and resilience that the community has shown is admirable as it is courageous.
Windsor High School, I'm a little short. Windsor High School leadership and the school as a whole are doing everything we can to show support for Montgomery at this time through school-wide movements of silence, wearing clothing and supports, and gathering signatures, thoughtful messages, and flowers from staff and students on campus. These were all delivered today to the Montgomery leadership class. Our student body is and will continue to be dedicated to be forming bonds of community in times of tragedy.
We are very fortunate to have dependable support from our community, partnerships with Windsor PD and Fire Department, approachable student advisors, social emotional counselors, upgraded safety systems, as well as from our own student body in the form of our Circle Keepers program. This program builds community not only at Windsor High School, but throughout our district, allowing students the opportunity to speak out, make change, and most importantly, feel heard.
Again, we are very fortunate to have these programs, but ask that the board continues to prioritize them. They truly are the difference between life and death. We appreciate the dedication of this board and district to its students, and while we are so thankful for all the safety measures in place, adding more support services such as wellness center on campus or increased access to counseling services would continue to show students that the well-being is top priority in WSD. The position of Windsor High School students, and we hope the district, is and will continue to be one of support, community, and student safety.
As we recognize the frustration of several schools in the Santa Rosa City School District, we have chosen, rather than to join in political demonstrations and walkouts, to instead show our support by trying to bring together the communities of Windsor and Montgomery. As in times of trouble, we are much stronger together than we are apart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Mayor Reynosa.
Thank you so much, President Adams and trustees. Trying not to get emotional after hearing all the public comments. First, I'll address you as the mayor of Windsor, and I'm very proud of our partnership and working since 1999. We have had the resource officer for the Windsor Unified School District. There's a partnership between us in providing that. And I support it. And if there was ever any issues as far as children not feeling safe, seeing the presence of an officer, then I would like to figure out why and figure out a solution to that. You know, it shouldn't be a reason for me, this personally now, to get rid of a resource officer. So we need to find the root of the problem of why certain students do not feel comfortable with police presence. Our current resource officer does an amazing job connecting with the student body, and I appreciate all the work they do. You know, we also partner with support from Sonoma County, support our student counseling services. So there's a juvenile diversion program. I'm so sorry to hear about the expulsions, but I understand that there's certain reasons that lead to that. But I'm very proud of the work that we're doing in partnership with the school board. And also, as a mayor of Windsor, I'm committed to supporting activities outside of the school, supporting improvements to our parks where children feel safe, could go and play after school activities, whatever we can do outside. It really takes a village to raise children. And now I'm going to put on my mother hat, my residence hat. And my oldest child was bullied in middle school. My oldest child attempted suicide because of that bully. And it's very difficult to talk about. You feel like there's no one wants to really, you're alone in the situation. And so it's really, really important to make sure that there is the support in all levels of schools, and that was the middle school. Now we're going to Brooks. To me, I feel like it really, we have to start early. We have to start early with acknowledging our children, supporting them, loving them. I just started a program. Now I'm going back to mayor. As a mayor, I have a youth honorary mayor. And I'm just very excited to make them feel included, make them feel part of this community. We see them, we hear them. And that's my goal for all the kids in our community, in the Windsor Unified School District, is just to be there, be available for them, and connect with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it, Rosa. Anyone else who would? Yes.
Hi, I'm Davin Godwin, and I teach at the high school and work with, in this case today, the Metra Club. And a little bird told me that there might be some discussion about this today, and I feel very empowered and welcome to speak my own opinion and to everyone. I feel, and I thank you all for that. I feel like there literally is an open door policy, and I feel allowed to say my piece whenever I have a piece to say. And so today I thought it was really important to have more students, to build on the student voice. So I really quickly threw together a little really unofficial, not very scientific survey for the students that I encountered today. And it started with the Metra Club and then the other classes that I saw. So I just want to share really quickly some student feedback. Regarding school safety, the students, I started with what their favorite part of school, and 70% of the students said that seeing friends with this was their favorite part. 11% said learning new concepts. A smaller group said connecting with an adult. And then they said walking around, the opportunity to improve. I also wanted to say, another question was, if I need support or have a problem, there is an adult on campus I trust for help. There are other surveys that do this much more scientifically. And this was just in response specifically to what happened at Montgomery. And a large majority, so 40, 60, 63% agreed or strongly agreed that they have an adult that can support them in that way. It does seem like we need to maybe double down on informing people about what restorative practices are. Virtually none of the students that I surveyed today knew what that was, or knew what restorative practices were. And I refused to answer them until they finished the survey, and then I explained. And then generally, the vast majority of them, almost 80% of them feel very safe on campus. The majority, not 30, 60, 74% of them feel, that was the larger majority is feeling safe in class. And then many of them, again, 75% of them feel safe on campus. And then there's a slightly growing number of people who feel unsafe in the bathrooms. 88.9 of them said that if they heard or saw something dangerous, they know exactly which adult they would tell. And so there's 11% we need to reach out to and make sure they know that there's an adult they can tell. Let's see, strongly agree.
the they feel, sorry, I'm looking at the pie charts. Um, I put the statement saying, "I'd feel safer if all students had more access to counseling or therapy." And th- the largest piece of the pie is that they agree, or strong agree and then strongly agree. And then there are about 20% who would disagree about that. And then I asked, "I'd feel safer if we had more law enforcement on campus." 52% was neutral on that one, for these students. And then about 30% said that they agree or strongly agree, with more law enforcement on campus. And then the largest agree or strongly agree percentage of the students that I encountered today said, "I would feel safer if our teachers spent more time on team building and bonding activities so we could know and trust each other more." And so I'm going to ask that all of the leaders reinforce that as much as possible, whenever possible, that teachers invest in creating ways for students to connect with each other and with us, because that seems like really a big bang for our buck. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Gottman. Anybody else for public comment this evening? Really appreciate the two more right? Hello.
Hi, my name is Christy Selby. I am a parent at both elementary schools. I have an 8-year-old who is at Maddie in 2nd grade and a 4th grader at Brooks. In Brooks, I'm also here to talk about the new rule at Brooks, but on a bigger level, the bullying issue that's happening there, and this whole punish all for mistakes of a few. And when our kids came home yesterday and gave us news that we weren't privy to prior, which is sort of what happens with any big news that comes out of the, especially Brooks, but sometimes Maddie. My daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, was really upset, and she thrives off of hugs and seeing her friends before school and girls running up and hugging her and holding hands going to class and linking arms. This is something that they thrive off of. My daughter spent the first 2 months of her life in a NICU, not being touched, not being held, like most newborns. I'm a hospice nurse. I can tell you firsthand what human touch does, from the first breath to the last and everywhere in between. So to give a list and a PR statement of all of the touch that's been an issue, which is stepping on toes and high five contests to see how hard you can get, all of these things are inappropriate for sure, but hugging your friend isn't. And one of the reasons they gave for implementing this was the increased number of referrals. And the increased number of referrals is just gonna go up because kids are already rebelling and they don't trust the staff anymore. And my daughter has severe anxiety, severe, and her friends are what makes her feel better. She's gone to adults there, she's gone to teachers. Brooks does not have a strong foundation for supporting the students. And so she doesn't trust anybody at that school other than her friends. So if she's at recess having a panic attack, or if I'm walking her to the gate and she's struggling to want to walk through those gates because she doesn't like going there, and her friend walks up to her and holds her hand and gets her through that gate, if she's going to be punished for that, that's a huge problem. She's afraid of being suspended. They're having nightmares that if they help their friend up off the floor, because they fall, that they're going to get expelled. This punishment for human touch is just not an appropriate way to go. This should have been discussed with parents. This should have been something that was a back and forth, or at least, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we want to implement. We're going to have an assembly. So when she got home, I could talk to her about it, and then we could have a discussion further. I had nothing to say. I run a parent group for Maddie Washburn. I'm on the PTA board. I'm really involved in this district. Yet to hear from my child news about a rule like this that affects her in such a negative way and affects a lot of kids in a negative way, we need to be teaching boundaries, and we need to be teaching kids how to use their voice and consent and how to stop people. And those are the tools that we as parents and teachers need to partner together to give our kids, and not just a straight take it all away. It just feels like lazy teaching to me. It feels like we just don't want to deal with the problem, so we're going to make it disappear. And that's just not the way we should proceed. I feel angry about it. I feel frustrated. I feel frustrated for my kids. I don't want my second grader going to Brooks at this point. I don't feel like it's a benefit to her to go to that school the way it is now. I think there needs to be change, and I think that the parents and the teachers and the staff and the board need to come together to implement some of this change for the good of the kids more than anybody else. I really think that this needs to be reconsidered, and a discussion needs to be had, and communication needs to be better. And I think Heather Bailey's great, but I don't want to hear a PR written statement from her. I want to hear from my teachers and my principals, and that's who I want to hear this from. That's who I want to have a discussion with.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Laurel Green. I'm a physical education and health teacher at Windsor Middle School. I'm here to just speak to sort of a missing piece within our middle school setting. We had a lot of restorative conferences and restorative circles happening at Brooks when I was teaching there. And I know that they have restorative circles and restorative practices at the high school. But right now, the middle school doesn't have any sort of training for that for our teachers and our staff. And so it's kind of creating a big a crevice, so to speak, or whatever that word is, a big canyon between the skills. And I recently was able to do a restorative circle with a class of 38 students after I had removed a student from a class and then decided to pull back the removal and do a restorative circle instead. And then a week later, the Montgomery High School thing happened. And these students were just like, they just fell right back into the circle and were able to just share their thoughts and feelings about it. And it was pretty phenomenal how they were able to go right back into it. And at the same time, many of the students had not had teachers address it at all, and they had a lot of questions and they were curious. And so I just want to come here to speak, to promote that, to encourage it. And I realize that there's a long list of professional development ideas, but I also know that a lot of those don't directly impact the students the way that restorative practices could and should and would. At the same time, we have students sometimes being suspended. Example, this week, 2 students were suspended for mistreating another student, and I emailed folks in charge and asked if a restorative conference or circle was set up to re-enter the students, and there wasn't one. And so I offered to facilitate one, but I also know that it would be good to have it be a matter of fact. Oh yes, of course, this is the date that that's happening, etc. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? Yes, Ms. Cullen.
Heather Cullen. I just wanted to do 3 things. One, I second what Laurel said. We've had that would be super helpful to have that at our school. Number 2, next week the CTE class, that's the Intro to Performing Arts, is putting on a play, and it's not a musical. Much to their chagrin, they're like, "We have to do a real play." I'm like, "This is all real." But it's Animal Farm, and the kids are the directors. The kids made the sets. The kids are doing the stage makeup. They're doing the costuming. They're running the lights, the sound. They did the media stuff. They went to KZST and recorded a commercial that they wrote. And you should be hearing that on all those radio stations sometime this week. So they're super nervous. This year, the class, over half the class, this is their very first play they've ever been in. So it really, it's exciting, and they're scared to death. And we would love for you guys to be a loving audience next Thursday at 7 at Windsor Middle School. If I don't know if you have a meeting or something like that. I'm just letting you know. And also, I wanted to just say that the Odyssey of the Mind team at Windsor Middle School won 3rd place, and the high school team won 1st place. So we'll be going to state at the end of the month. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, anybody else for public comment? Great. Well, thank you very much for your heartfelt words. Any comments back to staff from the board? Questions before we move into the rest of our agenda? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just normally we don't reply to things that are brought up during public comment. And so I kind of want to just jump ahead about future board items. And because some of the things that we heard about tonight, I'd like to discuss as a board. And so if we could let everybody know that we've heard what they've said, and maybe we can put this on our next board agenda to actually, so that way we can talk about it. So before they all left, I just wanted to know that because they might hear that at the end of the meeting, but they might not be here. So
Thank you, Rich, and we will. And thank you very much for those of you who took the time and your heartfelt comments and personal information that is helpful to know. And simply because we do not respond does not mean we did not hear you, don't care, and are not going to figure out, so what do we do about this, right? And so we'll have those conversations with staff when we talk about future board items. Any other comments from any other board members? Okay, thank you very much. That will conclude then our public comment. And look at you, right on time. Welcome, board member Jackson Caligari. I hope it went well this evening. We had deferred your report to whenever you got here, and now we're at 3.4, and it's you. So welcome. Glad you're here.
Great, thank you. Well, I know I missed last month's meeting for this similar thing. And of course, I'm late to this one, but all the other ones are on Saturday, so I'll be here. I also did not move on, so I'll be here for that reason as well. But I am going to talk about what I'm sure I'm going to go back and watch all the public comments that I missed, because I do want to hear everything that I wasn't here for. But I'm talking about what I assume a lot of people in the audience tonight were talking about and are here for, which is situations and the events at Monty and Santa Rosa City Schools as a whole. Of course, you heard a statement from Windsor High School students earlier, and I did have a hand in writing that statement. So I'll try to stray a little bit from those same points to avoid repetition. But the first thing I'm going to do is talk about everything that schools in our district have been doing kind of in response to these events. Windsor Oaks and North Bay met. Their staff signed cards and sent them over to Montgomery High School, as well as the Windsor High School staff. There were a lot of cards. I visited their campus today, which I'll talk more about later, and there was a poster in their office with a lot of kind notes from staff from Windsor. Ava Miranda, who you heard from earlier tonight, attended a listening session held on Tuesday for Santa Rosa City School Districts, which was kind of their first opportunity to hear from the public following the events of last week. And I can't speak too much to that because I wasn't there, but it was kind of a precursor to what I did go to, which was last night's school board meeting for Santa Rosa City School Districts. I was there for the first 90 minutes of public comment. And what we see is, I mean, there are certainly some differences in what people want, but what they definitely do want is resources. There's maybe some disagreement on what those resources should be, but they certainly want people and things on campus to make students feel safer. And I do think that Windsor as a district has a lot of those people, which is why that we are not necessarily in the same situation as a lot of Santa Rosa City School Districts, and why our students don't feel as unsafe as many students at Santa Rosa City School District. But it does kind of make very clear to me how important it is that we retain these resources, and how we'd like to expand them if necessary, if possible, but we certainly can't afford to lose any of the resources that we have now. Additionally, the students at Windsor High School and North Bay Met and Windsor Oaks Academy all came and signed a big poster for Montgomery and brought flowers that we delivered today to their campus, to their leadership classroom. And that's kind of been the main thing that we were doing. Windsor High School was asked to organize a walkout that a lot of Santa Rosa City School District's schools have been doing. A lot of high schools have been doing. We elected not to do that because, as we said, we're not really struggling necessarily with the same issues that those schools are dealing with. And to protest and say that we want things from our administration felt inappropriate to us. What we felt was the better course of action was to say, we understand that you guys are going through a tough time and we want to support you. But we did not elect to protest in the same manner as many of the other schools. Something that I was really proud of was that when we did go to Montgomery, we saw those notes from Windsor High School staff. I had talked to Forrest Harper, the principal at North Bay Met and Windsor Oaks, and they had done a similar thing. And there was nothing like that from any other school. We are a school that we are the only ones. A lot of school districts are protesting, saying that we want change, but we have been a district that has been there in kind of unity with Monty, saying we're in support of you guys. We're here to help you as much as we can. And I was really happy. I mean, I'm not going to comment on the actions of other schools and students, but I was really happy that we were able to support Monty and say, no matter what's going on over here, kind of in this more social sense, I suppose, that we are with them and we support them and we want to be there for them. So it's been a long week, and it's hard to organize those thoughts. I think you probably heard a more coherent version of our thoughts earlier, but the main point that I want to make, and this is something I've said earlier, is that we are very lucky to feel safe at our schools. This is something that we've been obviously reminded of, but it's also something that we can't take for granted. We can't just think that, oh, things are good now and things will be good. Because I remember the start of last year, Windsor High School had several fights at the beginning of the year. And, we made adjustments and we're in a much better place now, but it can slip again. Like we can't be like, oh, we're good now, so we don't necessarily have to do anything. Not only should we focus on, what can we expand? What is working that we can make better? I know we have social emotional counselors at Windsor High School, but I also know that they are very, very busy. And it's hard for students that want that resource to get that resource now. So what can we expand? And of course, what can we afford to lose, which really isn't anything at this point. So I'm happy with where we are, but I also want to make sure that we use this as kind of a wake-up call to make sure that we don't forget about how important school safety is. And that's about it for me. Thank you.
Before I ask if there's any questions or comments from my fellow board members, it just makes me proud to have lived here for 30 years, right? We speak the truth, again, not talking about other places, but I reached out to our student body president when dialogue with their students was cut off after one question. We don't do that here, right? And so thank you for that. And thank you for your comments. Any comments by my colleagues up here?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering because Ava Miranda, when you were up here at the podium, you mentioned the wellness center, and I'm not familiar with the wellness center, and I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit more about that.
No.
Can you come up?
There's another black shirt wearing Jaguar fella in the back row who maybe could help. I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, so I was more referring to a wellness center, just things that we can improve as ASB. I mean, Jackson and I have been working together very closely this week, and I think that we've, like he just reiterated, I'm going to reiterate exactly what he just said, but it's good to be proud of where we are and be proud of the comfort that our students feel compared to, elsewhere where problems are significantly worse in terms of student safety, but there are always things to improve. So I was saying the idea of a wellness center, of more social emotional counselors, things like that, to improve. Just ideas we're throwing out because.
Yes, I see. I understand. And then also, I was wondering from both of you, Jackson and also Ava, when in these conversations that you've been having, has there also been conversation about having restorative justice circles?
Yeah, well, I brought up also when Ale and I came up our circle program already. And I was saying how big of a program that is for students. That is something we have. I don't know in terms of staff training and things like that. That is equally important. That's what you're referring to.
Mhm.
I think that our circle program on campus is huge. And I know that you guys agree based on past things that have, been made in this very room. And so I think that it's definitely a program that we need to keep. My sister was a circle keeper when she was in high school, so I was always around it. And I think that the idea is very instrumental to who our students are today, that we have that availability to have circles, especially in health classes. I know that our health teacher uses them quite often. Yeah, I think that they're very important.
Okay, yeah, that's really, really important information. I just want to say thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
also because somebody made the earlier point that early on in the year, there were lots of fights. So I'm happy that we have this, a circle keeper. That's what you call it, right?
Yeah, we
Circle,
have a class of them.
circle keeper. And as far as the wellness center, I love that idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. And thank you, Jackson. With that 3.5, I feel like we need to take a break or something here.
Yes.
Let's.
Yes, please.
Yes?
Yes,
Let's take
please.
5 minutes. Okay, we are going to take 5 minutes. And then we'll come back with 3.5 with the superintendent's report. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Just like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm rocking.
Now, did I understand you said that you will be missing anything because you didn't make it on?
Well, yeah,
One short-sighted group did not keep you in the mix.
No, well, I started prepping for this speech that I just gave about 18 hours ago. And then the people that I were going against had theirs fully memorized. So, like I said,
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank God for that.
Before we break, we have public comment 2.0. You're just working it as the HR guy. That's beautiful. While we had taken a break, Amy Whiteley, the leadership lead at the high school, got a text from a counterpart at Montgomery High School, which I asked her if she might read because it goes right to what the written comment from the podium and what Jackson was talking about. So Amy, please.
Thank you. I appreciate, of course, having my students here to be able to add to the public comment regarding what's been happening since the incident at Montgomery High School on Wednesday last week. The students just started right away rallying together, and students from Santa Rosa City Schools reaching out to our Windsor High School students, who then I was able to have a conversation with, and we created sort of our action plan for Windsor. In addition, I am in contact with all the activities directors in our area, and Jim LaFrance is from Monty. He's been there for, I want to say 3 or 4 years. He's one of the best. And so I had reached out to him to see if our students could go down there today. So coincidentally, while they were speaking tonight, he had sent me a text message, and he said, "Thank you so much for the flowers and the cards. After a challenging 3 days, we just played a game today, and your kids jumped right in. It was fun to laugh with them. We took the flowers to the art teacher, who was our student teacher last year. We took the flowers to the art teacher who was teaching in the class Jaden died. She very much appreciated them. The sign is going to the memorial for the family. We really appreciate your kindness." So I thought that was pretty poignant that I just received this as our students are speaking. So thank you for letting me share it.
Thank you very much, Amy. We should keep up our good work, but also take a moment of pride and pause in the culture that we have. And so thank everyone for that. With that, we have a new thing, and I was just talking at the break from our HR director, Pete Sullivan, out of some comments that had come a few meetings ago. We are starting a process of staff recognitions. So take it away, Mr. Sullivan.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so just a little history on this. About 2 months ago, we got to hear from our WDEA president about a staff member. And it was about Steve Mitchell, and she covered all of the things he does to make his program the best and the dedication that he puts forth. And that it struck me as something that was really important And it really went along with what Trustee Ahmad has been saying for months, which is we need to start recognizing our staff to show the appreciation that we feel for them every month in some form. So although it's not a perfect start, this is definitely me on a trial run, and I'm looking for feedback on this. We're going to start our recognitions tonight. Mr. Williams has provided me with a short summary of a recognition for both a classified and a certificated individual. We're going to be rotating through each campus each month. So next month it'll be North Bay Met, and then the following month it will be the middle school, and then Cali, and then Brooks, and then Maddie, and then we cycle back through. And so after the presentation, which will be a brief presentation, I'll come up and read the information that has been given to me by the principal at each site. And you'll notice that I didn't invite the people here. That was intentional. Again, I really liked that we were here to honor Steve, and he didn't necessarily have to be here and sit and wait for his time to be called up and recognized. So my intention is to then invite all of you to the next staff meeting that is held at that campus, where I will present them with a small token of our appreciation. I will read this again, and if you're able to attend, that would be fantastic. So with no further, I will go ahead and read the comments written by Mr. Williams. And this is for Jeff Brandt. He is the certificated employee that he has chosen to recognize on his campus. Jeff Brandt has demonstrated a strong commitment to education, both inside and outside the classroom. He has dedicated more than 30 years to education, with most of his time at Windsor High School, which is a testament to his dedication and passion for teaching and service to the Windsor community. Jeff's impressive accomplishments as a Fulbright teacher and summer fellow for the National Endowment for the Humanities showcase his commitment to developing new approaches to teaching and learning. By participating in these prestigious programs, Jeff gained a wealth of knowledge and experience that he can share with his students and colleagues. What sets Jeff apart from others on campus is his innovative and entrepreneurial spirit. He has founded a SANAS Homestay Immersion Project, SANAS. I'm not sure if that's just an acronym or I'm supposed to say it. SANAS, thank you. Which provides students with an opportunity to travel to Spanish-speaking countries and study with medical professionals. This program is a unique way to give students a hands-on learning experience and prepare them for the future careers in the medical field. Jeff Brandt's dedication to teaching is evident in his ability to teach all levels of Spanish from beginning to advanced placement. He is known for his innovative teaching methods, which incorporate a variety of activities and resources to engage students and help them learn. I'm just going to side here. When I was an AP there, I used to love walking over to where Jeff's classes were. They were always outside at the tables. And one of the coolest things I saw, they were interviewing each other in Spanish, and then they would critique in Spanish their interviews. And it was fantastic. And the kids were so engaged when I would walk by. And then, of course, they wanted to share with me and they wanted to interview me. And my Spanish is, so it wasn't that great, but I can attest to everything that's said here. Jeff's approach to teaching Spanish involves creating supportive and inclusive classroom environment that promotes learning and understanding. He challenges his students to push beyond their comfort zones, providing them with the necessary tools and resources to succeed. His commitment to teaching his students is unparalleled, and his ability to teach all levels of Spanish is a testament to his skills as an educator. Jeff is also known for his supportive nature towards students and staff. He goes above and beyond to ensure that everyone feels welcome and valued, creating a positive learning environment that promotes success. His willingness to mentor and assist his colleagues has earned him a reputation as a respected and admired member of the educational community. Overall, Jeff Brandt's dedication to education, innovative spirit, and supportive nature make him an invaluable asset to Windsor High School. His contributions have undoubtedly impacted countless of students and educators, and we are fortunate to have him as a member of our community. Jeff Brandt. And for classified, Cynthia Straub. Cynthia Straub is an invaluable member of our team who has been working as an accounts clerk for almost 10 years and she has been in the district for 16. She is known for her meticulous attention to detail and her ability to manage multiple tasks simultaneously, ensuring all financial transactions are accurately recorded and processed in a timely manner. Again, I will step aside and say, I got to share a space more or less with Cynthia. So my office was adjacent to Cynthia's. And I was always over there asking and getting clarification on facilities, on budgets, especially when I had to do some budgeting for sports. Not so good, but she was very helpful in all respects. And her organization with facilities, if I needed any information about events that were occurring, and there are always events occurring at the high school, she was spot on and she was so helpful. And I really appreciated her. What sets Cynthia apart from others in her role is her dedication to providing exceptional customer service. It doesn't matter if it is a student, teacher, or coach. She's always available to answer questions and address concerns, and she does so with a friendly and professional demeanor that puts people at ease. She takes the time to explain information in a way that is easy to understand. She's always willing to go the extra mile to ensure that everyone feels welcome. Cynthia is known for her strong work ethic and her ability to work well under pressure. She's a team player who is always willing to lend a hand when needed, and she is consistently demonstrating a positive attitude that motivates others to do their best. Overall, Cynthia Straub's commitment to accuracy, efficiency, and exceptional customer service make her an invaluable member of our team. Her dedication to her role as an account clerk ensures that our financial operations run smoothly and efficiently, and her positive attitude and strong work ethic make her a pleasure to work with. We are fortunate to have her on our team. Cynthia Straub. Thank you, Mr. Williams. And I will be sending all of you an invitation. I believe the staff meeting is on the 3rd. So it's a Wednesday at 8. Am I correct? Okay. And hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pete. Appreciate it. With that, we are actually going to get to the bit of the meeting. We're going to skip a couple of items. I would entertain a motion for item 3.9, approval of our minutes of February 16th, 2023, before we get to the consent action items.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay. Vice President Lopez will present our consent action items under item 4.
I'm sorry, just give me a moment.
Okey doke.
Okay. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve consent items 4.1 through 4.12. Are there any abstentions?
I need to abstain from 4.1.
Okay. Thank you, Rich.
And actually, I'd like to have a discussion on 4. Oh golly, where'd it go? Well, we'll just go through this and then I'll let you know. Let me read which one.
Do you have questions or do you want to pull it off the consent item?
Just more questions,
Okay.
comment.
Let's get a second then. I'll second that motion then, Mallory.
Okay.
So,
And is there discussion?
Discussion?
okay, a second? No, a second?
Oh, a
Yeah,
second.
right, okay, yeah. First by me, Jen, and second by Stephanie. Which one did you have questions about, Rich?
It was on the club.
That I believe is 411.
Is that where it is? There we go. Yeah, what it was, my question is, well, it's kind of a twofold question because I don't remember a club, starting a club, not starting a club, ever coming up before the board before. I don't recall it. But anyhow, when I read through the documents, the only thing that kind of struck my mind was that, and Laurel, she's here, so I can ask. The only thing that was struck out at me was a question, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance. I've been swamped this week, or I would have reached out to you earlier just to ask. But was the question was that it talked about that says in order to elect officers, we had to ask volunteers because there wasn't enough members at any meeting to have an election, consistently to have an election. So the thought was, if we don't have enough people there to have an election of officers, is there enough people there to have the club? So that was, two don't make sense to me. So, well, you're here. I mean, it's a pub, we can ask these things, right? Or
Yeah,
no?
There's a question about it, and I'll just, while you're coming up, Laurel, I also don't recall ever seeing a student club coming up, so I'm wondering what
Yeah,
what it
I-
is.
I can, yeah, I can
Also
talk a little
my
bit.
concern and question. That's what I was waiting for, because I've never seen a club come across the
Right.
the
So-
board docs.
Okay.
So in order for a club to be able to collect money, it has to be approved by the board as a club of the ASB. And so this, from what I understand, Laurel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was already a club established in a way, but they weren't collecting money, and then they would like to, fundraise in the future. So that's why this came up on the board agenda.
That explains a whole lot of other questions why I had certain information was in there. So with your explanation, I withdraw my other question. So we're good.
Yeah.
Right, any other questions or comments on the consent items? Okay. With the abstention of item 4.1 by Rich, all those in favor of the consent action calendars 4.1 to 4.12?
Do you mean 4.11?
4.11, no,
Oh,
4.12.
okay,
So
okay.
we just had questions about, that,
Okay.
which I think are answered now.
Yeah.
So. No other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Well, thank you. We're rolling now. So 5.1, again, we adjusted the agenda. The Windsor Ed Foundation will be coming in April. I will share with, and again, Jen Cox, you can help keep us on track. Malinelli Lopez and I went to a day-long seminar for the California School Board Association on board presidents. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that, incoming President Lopez. But one of the things I learned is your voting is called preferential voting, student trustee, because you vote first to tell us which way the wind is blowing. And so instead of being asked student board member, we will all turn to you to look to say, tell us what your vote is on these action items as we go forward. So that's my one thing I remember out of that amongst some other stuff. So 5.2, the Windsor High School WASC report preliminary findings presented by Davin Goodwin, our WASC survivor. And thank you for your patience.
Hi, I'm Davin Godwin, and last year and this year I was the WASC coordinator. And I want to start by thanking my whole administrative team and Jeremy for trusting me with this process. I felt very, very supported and given opportunity to have real responsibility in the decision-making about how to build consensus across the campus using student and classified and certified input in recreating our mission statement and our vision statement, for example, in our student learning outcomes. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you. And then really briefly, I'm not going to read everything on every slide, but I wanted to give you all of the information. I think you may have heard that we got a very positive, I don't have access to clicking that through, do I? Oh, is it this? No. Yeah? Okay, thanks. I'll try it. Ooh, there it is. Oh, and it buzzes a little bit. All right. So very, very briefly, for those people that aren't familiar, WASC stands for Western Association of Schools and Colleges. They are the commission that actually validate our operation completely. They make our transcript legitimate. They say, yes, our credits count. Our students complete A through G requirements because the classes count, and WASC says that. So they come through normally every 6 years and say, yes, you're doing a really good job. Keep up the good work. Maybe look at these few things. We'll be back in 3 years or 6 years. And Windsor High School, in the history of its existence, has always earned 6-year accreditation, which is full credit, and until October of 2020. And they had the audacity to show up in October of 2020 when we were just getting on our feet trying to figure out what the heck was going on with distance learning and what were these swivel machines and what all of it. And there was some instability in our administrative makeup at that point. Dr. Collins was technically our principal, I think, but he might have been on leave. And that's when they showed up to evaluate our operation. So we were put on probationary status, which was pretty shocking. And we've addressed all of the issues. Last year, we worked really, really hard. And the visiting committee came back on February 5th through 7th. There were only 2 people because it was a probationary visit is a more truncated version of the entire process. And the 2 gentlemen came and visited classrooms. They met with every stakeholder group. They started with a reception in the library on the Sunday before. Thank you for those of you who were able to attend that. We appreciate that. And then they reported out Tuesday afternoon after spending 2 entire days visiting our campus and looking really at talking to as many different people and from as many different perspectives and going into as many classrooms as they could. They reported out on Tuesday afternoon, and their agenda included, well, explaining to us what the possible outcomes were of their visit. It was possible, and I didn't even realize this. It was possible that they could have immediately revoked our accreditation. Of course, that didn't happen. That's not what happened at all. They could have been continuing the process on probation. And although they are not allowed to tell us what our status officially is, because the commission doesn't meet until April. And when the commission meets in April, they will vote on the recommendation that the visiting team provided. And then Brian will receive a letter that formalizes our status. But they literally said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that we should expect to be back on track, that they observed good work. I've underlined on this slide, I've underlined the previous concerned, the current from the 2020 visit, the things that we needed to address that they found problematic at Windsor High School. And then the bold is what we're doing and how we've addressed that in the meantime. So again, there's a lot of text there, and I hate it when my teachers read the whole prompt, the whole slide to me, so I won't do that. But I'll just give you a sec. And so in short, oh, and then our strengths, they said again, as much as possible, when they were sharing out, they did not provide like teams usually do. Normally, every time I've been a part of an evaluating team visiting another campus on the WASC, under WASC auspices, we provide a slide deck. They didn't provide a slide deck. So Brian said, you're going to take notes while they talk. So I was just typing, madly typing. And so there were some things that are direct quotes. He said, this is a very strong school. We've seen a lot of hard work. The wink, wink, nudge, nudge was a direct quote. And so there are several things that we're doing really, really well that they commended us for. There's the third bullet down, the engagement of life in person on campus. They were really excited to be back in person and enjoyed all the different ways that students were able to engage in life on campus, especially after COVID. And they saw that, they really felt that on our campus. They did give us some areas for growth. The first one was, he said data should mean usable data. And what he meant by that, it came out in a couple of the focus group meetings that I was part of. It said that it should be pretty immediate, that right now one of the main sources of data is the CASP test, which only happens with the 11th grade. And it happens in the spring of their 11th grade year. And if we're lucky, we get the results in August. And so they were looking to see more immediate results that we instructors could use to adjust our instructional practices and deliveries. I'm also going to just comment really quickly on the fourth bullet down, because they actually instructed us to kind of narrow our focus with PD, to pick one or two things and just keep doing that all year long. And we have kind of been enjoying a smorgasbord of lots of different initiatives and lots of different ideas. And they were saying, pick a few and stay that path. And then very briefly, the next steps. Again, the commission will meet in April, and Brian will get an official notice of our status. And he's really good about being transparent, and he communicates with us really immediately and quickly, and clearly. So we'll know, I'm sure, as soon as he does. And then we already have begun to plan our professional development days to create scope and sequence, which will build alignment and equity across cores and vertically across grade levels in addressing a couple of those prompts. So thank you. And we really, really appreciate all of your support. And again, Brian, thank you so much for trusting me with this. Are there any questions?
Principal Williams, you'd like to add anything before we get to? Okay. Well, thank you. I'll make a couple comments and have the board, if they have any questions, then we'll go to public comment, and then I think bring it back for us. This is an action for us to receive, acknowledge. What are we doing here? Just receiving the report? Okay, so it's not on for action, but we will bring it back. I was there that Sunday, and there was two things that struck me. one, how many students and family members, and not sort of the direct faculty and the usual, I'll call the usual suspects, who would be there. And we went on a quick tour in the Williams mobile, which he really wanted to show him his Uber golf cart. But both of them repeatedly said how it is unusual to see that level of engagement. And they also said when they got to the campus, they said, wonder what happened. We can't imagine how this campus didn't pass the WUSD. And I will say on behalf of this body, there are a few things that we really are directly engaged in from the board. I mean, we do resources and set policy and priority goals. We hire one person, and we need to watch accreditation. And starting from here, we were not watching that at the time. And I think that's something that we can pledge to help, in the district to do. I would be interested for any comments, however, that my friend Trustee Ahmad had, because she had shared while we were there, I didn't know, and this is for, you're still here, Student Body President Miranda. A generation ago, when Stephanie Ahmad was in your shoes as Student Body President and this thing and that thing, what did you do related to WUSD?
Oh, so I was a WUSD representative. I was a
Went
student
on the
representative.
road with the crew.
Yeah. But Ava and I have a lot in common. So one of my best friends in leadership was named Ale. So it was very, so I think we might be generational twins. So maybe a future on the school board or something greater I see for you.
Thanks. Any other comments from board members?
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could go back to the slide before next steps. Yeah, I was looking at the first bullet point where it says, for example, core should collect and use information based on successful completion of A through G and pathway continuation. And I was wondering what kind of data or what will be collected?
Those, again, that's wording from the WUSD visiting committee. And they were recommending that cores, they look at their A through G path completion, which is college eligibility requirements. And we wanted to make sure that between the cores, that there was equitable completion of those, and that they wanted to make sure that there might be some cores right now that are more career-based, but they want to make sure that those students also can, if they choose to, access college immediately after high school. And that was already something that we, again, started building last year and this year in training all the faculty about the A through G requirements and where their class fits, and how to advise the students as they're choosing their classes about, for example, how to take that additional science class or math class or whatever they might need. So it was engaging all of the cores to
keep track of the students and how they were preparing them for both college and career.
Right. And I was wondering, Mr. Williams, if there was something in mind for that, because I know in a previous meeting, I was asking about how much time do students spend hearing about future career options?
So we do, we had some data from last year from our Youth Truth Survey that pointed out particularly the 10th graders were feeling like they were not getting anything.
It's coming to get you.
It's coming now.
Oh, I pushed it. All right. So we had data from last year that particularly our 10th graders were feeling like they were not getting information about college access and careers. So we actually had a head start on being able to develop many of those programs. We received an A through G grant along with, I think, everyone else in California, and implemented quite a few programs. We started allowing students to validate their grades. So if they received an F or a D and they wanted that grade to count towards college, we let them retake the course and receive a new grade. So there's a lot of things we did, but really what it was with an eye on equity, and we want to make sure, like if you're in the build corps, yes, you're getting all of that CTE training and those real world experiences, but we want them achieving at the same level as if they're in the STEM corps. And so, we've heard for 20 years there's the easy course, and we're really trying to eliminate that and make every core equal and rigorous.
And that rule would apply for, let's say if it's a PE class that's not passed, they would be able to retake that? Or is it only for the college classes?
So if it's not passed, you can always retake it for credit through credit makeup. But the only courses you would need to validate are courses that will qualify you towards A through G.
Right,
So
right.
your traditional English classes, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Amazing work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from yes, sir?
The comment one to staff. I mean, great job. Also, I appreciate you when you guys invite us to these things. Sometimes we can't. We're always busy. And my next part is I appreciate you guys. Sometimes we're all have different schedules, and it's one of the things I like about this board is that we all seem to always find at least one or two of us that have a slot that we can go and make it. And so I think it was important for you guys to be there when people come to see, when they see the members of the board there, they know that is important to us. So it's important to us. That I think that translates through. So I appreciate you guys going and covering for us who couldn't make it at that time, because it is important to all of us. And so thank you to you and thank you to the staff. And, this is kind of here, hold on a minute. I'm going to wink and nod that this report kind of resembles what I have felt has always been what we have here and what we produce and the opportunities we have for all of our kids. So thank you.
And if there's one thing I could say, board, you made an investment. So the first time this came around, we didn't invest in the process. This time we did. So we made sure that Davin had release periods so that she could do this work properly and make sure we could impact some really positive change at the high school. So that is a direct decision that you made. So just to point out, this is not a action item, but in essence, you made that action and it made this thing happen.
On this item, is there any public comment about, and again, well done. Thank you very much for presenting. Hey, well, report received. We look forward to getting that copy of the letter, Mr. Williams, when you get it. Next, going to item 4.2, which is an action item, 5.3. Consideration of approval of new job descriptions for 2 multi-tiered system of support continuous improvement specialists. And stepping into the fray is Assistant Superintendent Ferrer.
You want the more qualified person.
Was that like a tag? What was that? Okay, go.
Okay, so I'm here to present a request for a new job description called MTSS Continuous Improvement Specialist. It is a different type of a TOSA, which is a teacher on special assignment. It's one job description, but we are hoping to get 2 positions out of it. One person that covers grades TK through 5, and one that covers grades 6 through 12. So in light of the new forward movement that we have been focusing on and training our leadership staff on, and now our site staff, for MTSS. I did a small presentation 2 months ago, I believe. We would like to invest people power and resources into ensuring that we can effectively create an MTSS framework that's longstanding for our district and that yields results. So the emphasis for this MTSS TOSA or MTSS Teacher on Special Assignment will be on curriculum, assessment, instruction, and professional development around the implementation of MTSS. The overall duties of this role have been made to specifically support best first instruction for all students in all subjects, as well as in behavioral and social emotional systems. So this is an investment. We are discontinuing our math TOSAs, which are our math teachers on special assignment. They've done some great work, but we feel that this is what we need to move forward district-wide, not only academically, but behaviorally and social emotionally.
And can I add something as well, Sharon? So these are coming out of one-time funds. So we have learning block recovery. We have a learning block recovery grant, learning recovery block grant. And so these would be funded out of that block grant. And those funds have to be expended. 2028 is what we've designated, but it's 2029, correct, Austin? It's 2028. So we're using one-time funds to cover these positions, not general fund.
So what you say one time, it's one time that covers a span of
Correct.
several school years?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the board or comments?
Where we leave. I'm trying to think of how to say this right. So are we reducing our ability to help kids with math? Good. That's all I want to make sure.
That was almost Shakespearean in your delivery.
With all
to
the
say,
pauses
I'm
and all. Yeah.
interested in
Well,
math.
what was amazing was my question was short and your answer was shorter. You and I have set a new record.
See, and your follow-up was twice the length of the thing. Any other comments from the board before?
I have,
Yes, sir.
we need to make sure that this new position is not touchable, because I know we've moved TOSAs from being a TOSA back into the classroom in the past. I mean, we have to have a commitment that this is not going to happen, that this is what they're going to do. And I also wanted to say that the behavioral part is going to be more of a challenge than you have any idea about. I have been in a classroom, I was in a classroom today where I had to observe a child in another classroom that was good. The throw desks was throwing desks. There was a principal who had to be in there. An administrative assistant had to be in there, as well as another special ed teacher had to be in there. This is not an unusual situation. This was in a 4th grade class. So I'm just saying, you have your work cut out for you to make this whole program work. And these are not students that are even identified. So I just want the commitment to be there to make sure that these positions stay there and that they are the help that these teachers are going to need, because they're going to need help.
I don't think you could. You said that perfectly, and it's what we're noticing as well. We do have a lack of tier 2 interventions for our students who are not identified with an IEP, and it's been a constant conversation of ours. In fact, when we're talking about the funds that we just said these positions are coming out of, we just not just started the process, but we've started a process of identifying what's needed, and all of our conversation has been around student behavior more so than academics with regard to learning recovery. So we're there with you, Mr. Cornell.
Okay, because I mean, the reason I bring it up is because I'm looking over there and I'm thinking that poor teacher now is trying to huddle the rest of the kids and she was still trying to teach the other children who were still left in that class while this other situation is going on in the classroom. It's an amazing job. It's a difficult job, but we do need the help. We need the help in those classrooms.
I would anticipate that in May, you'll have a plan that has to do with everything you just described, and it'll be a plan for these funds that I just described.
Okay. Thank you.
I was going to ask on that maintenance of effort cost, but we'll cover that when we get to the more comprehensive investment here before we get to budgets in May. With that, are there any comments from the public on this action item? Okay, seeing none, this is an action item. We will now try the new 2023 requirement. Preferential vote number 1 from student board member. What say you about consideration of approval of item 5.3?
So much pressure. Aye.
Okay. And the rest of the board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? That's 150, I think. So. Oh, I don't know if did we have a motion?
I don't think you did a motion.
I'll make the motion and
I'll second.
There you go. Unless you want to do it, Paul. I know it's just a passion. Okay. Yeah. Motion by me and second by Malinelli. Thank you, team. Okay. Now to the meat of the biscuit here on 5.4 with consideration of approval of our 2022-2023 second interim financial report. Austin is up wearing his protective jacket from the slings and arrows of the board. Well played. Okay, go ahead, sir.
All right, so this is second interim. Am I on? No. Wow, you gotta get close today.
Yeah.
It's a proximity alert.
Yeah, I was gonna say, never mind. I was gonna say glad COVID's not a thing anymore, but it still is. So, anyways, second interim 2022-23. So let's. Oh, is there a clicker? I'm sorry. All right, so an update on the governor's budget, and not all of these items are in the governor's budget. So, like Prop 28, we know is not; it's outside of it. But I'm going to walk you through kind of some legislative changes at the top, and then kind of how it feeds into the budget a little bit, and then we'll go through kind of how it affects us. So, the governor releases his budget 3 times a year, right? January, then May, and then in July he certifies it. This year, the July one is actually going to be a little bit more important than usual because I don't know all the details on this, but because of some COVID tax relief stuff that he did and pushed it out, he basically deferred it. And so they won't have all the estimates in until April. And so his May and July budgets may differ a little bit more, but not too severe enough. So one of the main changes is the cost of living adjustment has gone up. So the cost of living adjustment is an increase in funding for us. So we get more revenues based off of it per student, right? So one of the interesting things about the governor's budget, though, was it did not assume a recession. And the reason why that's important is because both of the other main parties that project the budget both assumed a mild recession. And so since the governor's budget in January comes out, he only has revenues through November. And so now we have revenues through January, and the revenues actually match the other 2 houses. So it'll be interesting to see if that cost of living adjustment stays there or if it's going to end up going down. And then if it were to end up going down, then it would require a passage by the House to actually allow the governor to overturn it. So usually the governor is a little bit too conservative, right? Kind of similar to our budgets. We try to be on the conservative end. So the governor tries to be on the conservative end as well. But in this case, he was on the aggressive end. So then the next step was the passage of Prop 28. So that's going to start in the next school year. I wanted to add that in there, though, because it ties into the second one. So the governor, once Prop 28 passed, for the first time I know in my career, I don't know about Jeremy's career, but he reduced something that he had already given. So he said, we're going to give you, last year, he said that $3.5 billion in arts, music, instructional materials block grant. He's actually reduced that by 1.2, which is about a 30% decrease, right? And so for us, that's going to end up resulting from us getting about 2.1 to about 1.35 in that general vicinity. So it's interesting. It ends up still being better for us because in the short term, that was just a block grant, right? And Prop 28 is long term, and it's something that we backed as a district as well. And so, yeah. So in the long term, it's better. Go ahead, Rich.
but if I could say it in just normal terms.
Yes, sir.
We all thought when we voted for that,
Yeah.
that we were going to have what we have. And though it was sold
Mm-hmm.
and written and everything else,
Yep.
that we were going to get that 1% and it was going to come on.
Yeah.
But we had the old rug snafu pulled out from underneath us. And now we do have that 1% in our right pocket, but now our left pocket is empty.
Correct.
Well, not empty. There's a few,
I gotcha.
there's a couple, it still makes a little noise.
Yes.
Few coins in there.
Yeah.
So we really, so we're not getting what we thought. They just reduced, where they had discretion, they just took the discretion away. And so, like you said, we have more than we had. It might be more, because it's not a grant, now it's more locked in, but we're not getting what we thought we were going to get.
Correct. And then what was great for my position was there was no major categorical or restricted program changes. So in the last 2-3, what'd you say?
First time in a while.
First time in a while. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we've been swamped. We have more than double the amount of grants in this district. And I actually have a slide later that kind of goes through the ones that are currently sitting in our fund balance. But we had so many categorical and restricted grants over the last 2 to 3 years that we're constantly felt like making plans for all these different grants. And so there is a little bit of me that's selfish in the fact of it's nice to actually cool it for a minute and then get back to reality. So that's the governor's budget update. The next slide kind of shows what I talked about originally with the 2 different houses and how they projected income, right? And we talked about how a majority of the income at the state level that gets given to us is personal income tax, right? And so the blue is what the governor had projected in his budget. And then the legislative analyst office, even though it was in November, had projected what was considered more accurate. So I like to look at these 2 and think of like the superintendent and CBO projections, right? The superintendent obviously being the governor and the CBO being the LAO.
Must have had evaluations last month. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes. So you can see the difference. And again, the revenues are aligning with the LAO pretty steadily. So with all that being said, it doesn't really matter because we still decided to use the assumption of a higher cost of living adjustment. The governor projected it, and then School Services of California agreed with it. And usually if those 2 are going to agree on an assumption, we're going to use it. And so that's what we decided to do, even though it may not come to fruition. So some of the other changes that were a little bit different since first interim, which was in December, was there's additional cost of CPI, which is California Price Index or Consumer Price Index, sorry. And yeah, it was unfortunate to see that go up because it was already high. So to just keep going higher, and then it also got higher in the out years. So basically what they're projecting is that inflation is going to stay a little bit higher than what was the projection 3 months ago. And then enrollment projections stayed, they stayed steady since first interim. They're still, we're still in declining enrollment, but it stayed steady within 15 students of where we originally projected it. And we actually go through a pretty intense process in the matter of first interim to second, because we sit down with all the principals and we debate back and forth on how many kids, right? Brian Williams is always going to tell me he's going to have 100 more kids coming than he actually has. And so we sit there and we debate. So we go back and forth. So our enrollment projections stayed within 15 students. And then unfortunately, ADA percentage is decreasing due to COVID. And that's one of the assumptions that we'll talk about on the next slide a little bit. Actually, I have 2 more slides. The next slide really talks about it a lot. But ADA, it's decreasing. Last year, we were thinking it was just because COVID was still a thing. This year, it almost felt like, we were on the cautious side culturally. And so at the first reporting period, which is historically going to be your best reporting period throughout the school district, it was at a very historic low for us. So that is something to watch as we move forward. And I'll talk about on the next slide how that actually will affect us long term, not just right now. And then we had a gain of 1% unduplicated. And I have to tell you, I fought really hard for that 1%. I had several people in my office calling parents, and we were the only district in Sonoma County to receive an increase this year. The reason for that is because when the governor mandated free meals this year, why would a parent fill out a meal application, to try to get a free meal, right? That was the whole purpose of it. And so this year, we wanted to show, well, we receive a lot more funding that's not just tied to food, right? We receive our LCAP funds completely through that. On top of title funds, we also receive before and after school care funds. I mean, so many different types of funds. So we knew that was going to be important, especially this year. And we had a team on it. And then the principals were great. Brian left. But yeah, I mean, they all were calling parents too, talking to them when they came into the office. So that was a team effort for that 1%.
And Austin, maybe take a second for all those folks who are playing at home.
Yeah.
When we see a 1% unduplicated and $53,000 more, what is it that we're asking or reminding those families that they are eligible for that they might not have applied for? Just give an example, whether it's, the free and reduced lunch or other things, that there are programs.
For sure.
If you could just talk about that for a second,
no,
because
that's great.
you made a good, I get what the outcome was, but maybe articulate how we help families, help the district in our resources because of their unique situation.
Yeah. So some of the things that a family will get if they, do indeed certify as being either low income, an English learner household, or a foster youth household, is they'll get free bus to school, right? So their bus passes are free. They get free technology repair. So, if the student has, I don't want to say, they break a laptop, we're going to replace it for free, but we have certain items at a reduced price for those students. On top of that, before and after school care is huge, right? So they get free before and after school care. In that they get a dinner, and then they also get what we're going to try to implement is a tutoring program as well through before and after school care. So they get I don't want to say laundry list, but it was a little. We always call them meal applications before, and so now going away from that term and trying to show there's more than just meals is important. So good question, Bill.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yep. And then final point that I want to make since first interim is the PERS employer rates go up. Go ahead, Rich.
I'm sorry, I forget. Following up on Bill's question, if that gain of that 1%, if our district improves or increases that another 2 or 3%, don't we hit a threshold that then puts us in a
supplemental?
Yeah, we get a lot more.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So this district has never reached the threshold, which is 55%. And right now we're at 51%. So we're about 4% off. But at 55%, you receive what's called concentration grant dollars. And those are on, like, if you can picture an exponential yield curve, right? Math guy.
Hockey stick.
Paul will love that. Yes. It just goes up. And that's how concentration grants happen. And so, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but in Southern California, I mean, those districts are so wealthy, and it's because they have 75, 80% unduplicated students, a lot of Spanish-speaking and low-income families, and then foster youth families too, which is not good. But they receive so much more money to help support those students. And so for our district, we've never historically gone up to that percentage. But we're about 4% away from it. And then once you hit that number, the little bit more you go over really makes a big funding difference. Yeah.
To make that point clear, so Roseland is a concentration district. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's high. And I only have my numbers from 2020, but their per pupil funding was over $20,000 per student. We were around 12. So, and that's due to concentration grant funding.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, a hockey stick goes way up. So, and what's great about that too, that I should also add, Rich, and good memory, because it used to be 65%, and within the last 2 years, they've actually knocked that down to 55 to give districts like us a little bit of a chance to get there, which is great. So PERS employer rates are increasing. That was a difference since just November. So they've been on the rise the last 2-3 years that we've known about. But just since November, they've gone up with this January proposal. So that is a change that has happened. So one of the things I do want to talk about, because it's confusing and it really ties into this budget and what's going on with attendance right now at the schools. So prior to this year, right? So last year and all the way back to 2012, when our funding mechanism, LCFF, local control funding formula, was implemented, ADA was calculated just two ways. It was either you're funded off your current year or your higher year or your prior year, whichever year was higher, right? So it's either your current year or your prior year, which one was higher. It was as simple as that. And so I actually put our actual ADA there. Now those numbers only include WUSD. They do not include Cali. But you can kind of see that, and of course, 1920 and 2021, they were hold harmless. But prior to that change, if you look over on the right, we would have only gotten 3,176 this year, right? As opposed to in 22-23, in 22-23 would have had 3,166 or 3,176. Does that make sense? It was between which ones were higher. And so one of the things that we had asked for, but it just delayed the problem a little bit, but you could tell that there was going to be a fiscal cliff no matter what. You have a drop off of 325 students or 330 students. You guys can do the math at roughly $12,000 a student. You're looking at about, what is that, Rich? Your math guy, 3.6 ish.
I said 4.
4? Yeah, 4. Close. Yeah, 4.2. Yeah. So you're looking at $4 million that change, just that cliff would have caused. And so what the governor did to kind of fix that is he called it the COVID-19 ADA relief. So your ADA that you're going to be funded off of, ADA, just for everyone, is average daily attendance. So the average number of students that attend school every day. So your ADA that you're funded off of is either going to be the current year, the prior year, or the average of the last 3. So he added that in there. And whichever one was the higher number, you would get funded off of. And so I put the little box down there to kind of try to show that change, right? So prior to that change this year, we would have been funded off of the 3,176 because that would have been last year's number, and that number would have been higher than this year. But with that COVID-19 ADA relief, we're going to be funded off that. That's the 3,395, which is the average of that 1920, 2021, 21-22 year. So if you were to take the average of those 3 years, the prior years, that's your average. And so we received an additional $218, attendance that we were funded off of this year, which is again $12,000 a student. You guys can do the math, 2.4-ish.
Austin, can I interject one thing as well? Is
Yep.
my mic's working? So I had the opportunity to speak to our legislators on behalf of the superintendents in the county. And one of the things that I advocated for was one more year of relief, of hold harmless. You see in 1920, our number's the same, 20 to 21, right? I asked for one more year because our ADA is way down because we're at 92%, 91%. Some places are in the 80s. And so saying that it's now being enacted, we're being held accountable for our attendance doesn't seem super fair this year when we had so many students out sick because of what we went through. So I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to make the change, but I need you to know that it was advocated for, and that would be a massive difference, right? We're projecting 3,400. Well, we'd be up 100 students if that was, put in place by our legislators.
So do you have a slide coming up for the projection or what we anticipate for 23-24?
Yes.
Okay.
Good question. And I don't know if I have the funded, but one of the things, and Bill, you're right on track, and it goes back to what Jeremy was advocating for. I don't want to say we saw this coming, but we saw this coming.
We did.
And so we kind of figured that ADA wasn't going to return as quickly as the legislature thought it was going to, right? We thought that students were still going to be absent. And so because of that, though, because of the lower percentage the last couple years, you're going to see in the out years that those revenues start to kind of flatten because it's going to take the average. So all of it counts now. And so you're going to have a lower percentage for 3 years as opposed to before it was just between 1 or 2 years, if that makes sense. Okay, so these were the assumptions used for this budget. And as you guys know, the entire budget is based off of assumptions. We used the higher cost of living adjustment, which for the 23-24 school year goes up to 8.13, which we absolutely hope comes to fruition, if not more somehow. Hopefully we get a huge influx. And then 24-25, we see 3.5%. Enrollment projections, you see that going slightly down. If you notice, we did budget kind of the historic trend in enrollment projections going down. So that was the projections that we used for that. And
Let's talk about it here.
Let's talk about it.
It's a little bit confusing because we've also talked in our facility master planning committee meetings about how we could get an enrollment bump once these projects are completed. So we wanted to build those in. We talked about building them into this budget. The problem is all those projects are behind, every single one. And so for us to know when they're actually going to be finished and have inhabitants, we have no clue. So to try to project that would probably be fairly irresponsible on our part at this point. At least that's how we're feeling. And so we're going with our historical trends until those are complete and people are in them, and then we will project what our enrollment is based on the number of units that are filled. Does that make some sense? I hope it does.
And I have a follow-up question to that, because I think even though we're waiting, there's still kind of a different approach in conservative budgeting between when you're looking at facilities and master planning versus when you're looking at enrollment projections for like budget purposes for the immediate next cycle. Can you talk a little bit about that, Austin, like what it means to do a conservative estimate in both kinds of scenarios?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so the facility master plan process, it was brought to you guys at the last board meeting, but it was something that we had started, well into last year. And so at the time where they're going to get their numbers from of when those kids are coming in and in what years, they're going to get it from actually the town's planning commission. They're going to sit down and they're going to go, when are all these projects expected to be completed? And that's what they did, right? And at the time they said, oh, we have these roughly 12 projects that are going to be completed in 2023. We said, whoa, it's a good thing we're starting this process now because we don't have facilities for an additional 800 students that are going to be coming in. So we got proactive about it. We have started the process, are going through it. And so conservatively on the facility side, and remember they're two totally different funds. So on the facility side, it's more conservative and frankly better planning on our end to be thinking proactively ahead of gaining these additional students and be ahead of the developments to have a home for them. So that way we're not building portables that later have to get torn out and then rebuilt permanent buildings. And that's just a waste of money at that point. So anywho, so that's kind of the conservative financial planning. Now, going into the budget side of it, I'll give you an example, right? Across the street, there's supposed to be a development that's supposed to be finished building, right? There's not one building up over there. So at the same time, we have a list of all the developments that are going up. And so as Jeremy and I drive around town, we kind of look and go, where's that one at? Where's that one at? Where's that one at? And we have our key points, right? Because we know we're going to get more students per affordable housing as opposed to single dwelling, right? So we kind of have in our heads the priority ones. And with all the weather concerns and everything, it just doesn't seem like things. And plus, CPI is just still going up. So I'm not so sure that contractors are wanting to build right now. Anywho, I'm not an expert in all that, but all I can say is that the construction projects have not been completed at the same timeliness that we were originally told / had expected. So for conservative budgeting reasons, which is in a whole different fund, we're going to be we use these projections. And I do have to say, if you notice, we've never used the projections in this budget from the facilities master plan projections. And again, it's the same thing, right? It's the point you brought up, Stephanie, is they're going to be conservative in the fact of you're going to get more students than you actually are, which is actually funny because I projected more students this year than they did. And we were within 25, I believe. And I think they were about 80 off. So, yeah, but we're in the trenches, right? We know our town. So anywho. All right, so then the next one is the ADA percentage that we talked about. So this was a big one because as you can see, that 91.93%, that was our first reporting period. And historically, as I had said previously, that first reporting period is always higher than the second or the annual reporting period for the whole year. And that's what it was this year at the first. And so last year we saw a similar thing where the first reporting period was very low, but then it stayed low the whole year. So we're going to use that same projection, or at least I chose to use that same projection this year, to where we're going to use the P1 reporting period. And then we didn't expect an increase in the next 2 years, but we didn't bump it up back up to what the district standard has been. So we see an increase of of roughly about 1% going up in the next 2 years, but that is going to hit us for the next 3 years because of the change in how we get funded off of average daily attendance.
You know, this is probably a good time, Chairman, when you're talking to our legislators, and I'm going to throw this out there because I'm sure the answer is no, but we're talking about budgets and budgeting. So the state of California says, hey, we have Windsor has 4,631 students at $12,000 a student. The state is obligated, if everybody came to school every day, they're going to have to send us this much money. Yet they're getting about a 9% discount, and they're getting to keep 9% of the money that should have came here or could have came here in Sacramento. So the first question I'd ask is, Governor, where did that 9% go? Or were you always counting on in your budget that you never were going to send it to us? And all the other schools the same. So when you talk to them, maybe this would help us as trustees, administrators, teachers, and everyone else. So instead of guessing and having to take all these assumptions, if we know that we have 4,631 students that we're responsible for, it would be so simple for them to say, hey, Jeremy, I'm going to send Windsor a check for $12,000 times that number of students. And now you educate those kids, figure out how to get them, because we're responsible for them, right? It would make it so simple. I know it would take away everyone's power to dangle the ball of yarn. I don't know why everybody's laughing, because
I'm laughing because I've had the privilege of representing the superintendents in this county for the last 5 years.
yeah,
I believe my third year representing the superintendents, I made that argument and was told by Senator McGuire, Jeremy, it's never going to happen. So I made the different argument this year. I think it was this year I did it. Yeah. Because I was basically told it's never going to happen. It costs too much money. And I'm not an expert on this, so please don't quote me.
Sure.
I believe we're the only state that does it this way. Most other states do this completely based on your enrollment.
right.
So
And this is why I'm bringing it up, because I talked to my buddies in Idaho, talked to my buddies in Utah, talked to my buddies in Arizona.
Yep.
And when I was explaining the ADA and also they're going like, what is that?
it's
And I go, you don't
annoying.
do that? And they go, no, we have this many students is how much we get paid.
Yep.
And then on top of that, they get paid additional money per student that is a special student. So that has special needs and different things. So I know that sounds real simple, but you're already telling me that you already did it and you already got kicked in the shins.
Yep.
What's that?
I'll stay on it. It's I mean, it was pretty clear. And Senator McGuire is a good supporter of ours, right? He really is. And he really just wanted to be honest, say, because he took this and tried. And he essentially said, it's not going to happen. So try to come up with a different way to advocate.
Okay.
But I mean, I could stay on it. I'll stay on it. I just don't know if it'll actually bear much fruit.
Sure. Well, as Bill likes to say, for those who are playing at home, some might want to ask that same question. So since the game that we're playing right now is attendance percentage, I think that a small investment somehow that we can continually make in all of our messaging to home is twofold. One, the more your kid attends school, the more funding we get. And the more funding we get, we can offer more and more and better for your kids. Because we're losing, 9%.
About $1 million a percentage point.
Yeah, we're it's $8 or $9 million is not coming our way. That if we think what we could do with that 8 or 9 million, and that was cut every year, they could go towards salaries, additional teachers, additional mentors, additional help. I don't know that there's a real understanding at home with what that translates into. So, so I don't know how we could message that maybe a little bit more. But anyhow, thank you. Sorry.
Rich, I want to say a little bit about ADA too. I think it is the worst way to fund. I don't even understand the rationale behind it. You're encouraging kids to come to school sick, which all the teachers can nod. It's a terrible system. And and if they are sick, you got to keep them for 10 or 20 minutes, whatever it is, before you can send them home so you get the ADA. Do they really realize what this does?
I don't think so. It's a budget decision.
I know it's a budget thing, but it's also a human thing.
Yeah, I don't think
And it affects every single person that works in a school. Let's send them to school sick because we need the ADA. Anyway, that's all.
That's the part of it that's bad.
Yeah.
Because now with COVID, all of us are much more aware. I mean, if I start to get a sniffle, I'm like, okay, I go to the office. Hey guys, I'm just not sure. So I'm going to leave my door shut. I'm wearing a mask in my office just to make sure. And then I wait a day or two and then I test to make sure we're all good. So I think everybody's still got that freshly in their mind of it's better to stay home than to, you don't want to get somebody else sick. So I think that also is going to be in our numbers for a few years until people,
and Austin and I debated this, right? I mean, this is a significant part of how you build a budget. So we really talked a lot about this ADA percentage. And to your point, that's kind of where we landed is we don't think we're going to go right back to normal ways where we're at 95, 96% ADA attendance rate because there's remnants, right? Somebody now that may have not stayed home with a stuffy or a sniffly nose, they're staying home. So yeah, this is a hard one to project. I think we hope we're wrong, because it significantly affects our budget. But we're just not sure.
So let's let Austin keep pressing on. I know that's all right. I know he has a couple of more slides. So
I will say too, the county is last year the average was about 3% lower, just countywide. So I mean, it's a problem across California. So all good points. So there's that 1%. The next one is that the unduplicated pupil percentage, right? There's my 1% that I worked so hard for. So it's in there. We're 4% away, Rich. And then you have CPI that's going up still. Inflation is still persisting. I think it's funny how they keep projecting it to be a 4-month thing, and then after 4 months go away. But it's now been 2 years and it's still up above 5%, which is very, very high. STRS is staying the same in all 3 years, and then the PERS rates continue to climb. So that was one of the changes, was the PERS continues to go up. And these are all changes within the last, 2-3 months from last time I saw you guys and presented the budget. So going to the actual budget. So one of the things that we've talked a lot about is kind of looking at restricted versus unrestricted programs. And of course, the budget that you guys are seeing tonight is combined. And if you remember, right, last year the state had historic revenues, right? It was almost this personal income tax went crazy because of the stock market. And then because of that, we got so much restricted money that we had to create plans for. And like I said, I have a slide later that outlines all that restricted money. But one thing that I want to note in here is, so you see that 64 million going down to 60 million. That's because a lot of that is that restricted money, right? Our unrestricted balance of LCFF is still going up even with the low ADA percentage. And that's, because of the cost of living adjustment that we built into the budget. So in the current year, we see an excess of about $2 million, and all of that and then some is all restricted money. So you can see an ending fund balance that we're projecting of roughly 17.5 million. But you can see that fund balance is slowly going down in those out years. And we talked about that learning recovery plan. So what we basically did was we got a ton of one-time restricted money that could only be used on certain things, right? COVID, we all are aware of. Title funds are every year. But we got a lot of COVID funds. We had the A through G grant that I believe it was Brian and Davin referenced. Was it you, Davin? Yeah. So we just received a lot of one-time money, right? And with the learning recovery funds, that was about 3.8 million that we received. So out of that additional revenue, 3.8 million of that is the learning recovery. We wanted to create a plan to spend it going forward, and we wanted to spend really about half a year developing a plan. And one of the things that's come up tonight is student behaviors, right? And so, we happen to have a board item that addresses student behavior, and that's mainly, I don't want to say mainly, but that's a big part of the plan moving forward is student behaviors.
It's the beginning part of the plan.
Yep. So, anywho, any questions on this slide, or are we good to move forward?
So I just looked from a structural deficit
Yes, sir.
standpoint, looking at the excess, while we have a nice 2.1 closing this year.
Yep.
We then see 17.5 drop to 15.4, drop to 13.3, because we're a scooch over $2 million deficit spending.
Yep.
Because our 62 million in expenditures remains relatively consistent.
Correct.
And we drop, that $4 million, even though some of the one-time money is for multi-year programs.
Right.
I think that's always something to watch. As I look at that, I think, all right, 2 million in 24-25 divided into 13 means we got 3 or 4 years of that, and we have run through a budget that's a structural deficit budget. And we just need to, again, look to turn that, to smooth that in my mind, so that, we can go in, sustain levels of expenditures and programs and benefits, but knowing that something needs to change. And I always let's build revenues then, right? But failing that, the other place is to not spend as much. And we have some buffer now, but I look, this is a 3-year, and that's all we do in a multi-year plan, but also so what does 26, 27 look like absent changes? And so I appreciate the way that you portray that to let us see these macro numbers, because 17 million of reserves in June is a big number.
Yep. It is a big number.
And, I think when we see that one about the restricted fund balance grant, you're going to show that one with the 7.5.
Yep.
That half of that's already accounted for, though. So, okay, just wanted to point that out, because I'm all for having expenditures for programs and benefits and what we've talked about, and sustaining those resources that we had so much public comment about. But it also needs to have us looking in a longer term view to say, so what do we do to have that parentheses negative $2 million in excess, maybe go to $1 million a year, right? We can sustain $1 million a year for a long time.
Correct.
As we're looking at adjustments. We can't sustain negative $2 million structural deficit for more than a few years.
Right.
I mean, this doesn't trouble me too much. A couple of more years of this, when we get out of a double-digit fund balance, I would be concerned.
For sure.
So, okay, thank you.
Yeah. So as you kind of look at fund balance, right? We talked about that structural deficit, fund balance going down. So this is kind of the breakout of fund balance. And one of the things that we talked about, and don't worry, it's the next slide where I break out all the restricted programs. I should have put that earlier now looking back. But, reserve for economic uncertainty at 5%, that, 3% is the state standard, right? And for our district, because we receive so many property taxes in December, that 5% is extremely helpful just in terms of cash flow, because if we don't have, that's not even a month of payroll for us. So anywho, restricted, committed, or assigned. So that is money that is, if it's restricted, it can only be used for certain things, right? If it's committed, it has been designated for certain items that we know is going to be coming up in the long term or short term. And then assigned, so certain things like, if I allocate Brian 150,000, and he only spends 125,000, I'm not going to take that away from him next year. I'll go, Brian, you can still have your 25,000, right? So, not that Brian ever has carryover, but anyhow. So then you look at our unassigned, and that's really, unassigned is the money that's truly freed up in our budget. So we look at that $62 million budget, and then we look at 17.5 million is in ending fund balance. But the only piece of that that truly is freed up is that unassigned amount. And so you can see that amount, Bill, to your point, of 1.6 going down to 1, going down to 230, right? And so a lot of that, like we said, is based off of assumptions, ADA being lower, but that's where we're at. Finally, to the slide. So this is the restricted fund balance, and we always forget about all the grants that we get and all the plans that we had to do, and then we look at it on a list and go, oh, that's actually a lot. So I'll start at the top and kind of explain some of these a little bit into detail. But if you were to add all these up, it's within $10,000 of our restricted ending fund balance. So we have even more, probably another 15 that are like $200 or $600. And I decided to not include those just because they're such a small dollar amount. So first one is expanded learning opportunities program. That's the before and after school program. That's one of the main ones. And I'm just going to touch upon the big dollar amounts, right? Educator effectiveness. So that was a grant that came out of the governor's surplus for increasing kind of teacher professionality, if I want to call it that. Kind of coaching / mentoring teachers is a way of putting that educator effectiveness. And we received quite a bit more than that. And so that was a plan that's been spent down now over the last couple of years. Restricted lottery, that can only be used really on instructional materials that are not consumable in the classroom. And really that's curriculum, right? It can be educational technology equipment, or it can just be standard textbooks in the classroom. Going down even further, you have a preschool grant for special education, right? So once a student turns 3, we have to offer them special education, even if they're not age eligible for being in school. And so they noticed that there was a big uptick during COVID for that. And so that was one of those governor surplus ones that came out during COVID, and we still have a little bit of that left. And then you have the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant, right? So we talked about 1.35. That's about what we're projecting. They haven't come out with new estimates since the governor cut it, but that is roughly, if you use the same logic, about what we would get. And that includes the reduction. So going down.
I'm sorry, on that one,
Yeah.
Austin, because that's that and the learning recovery are the two big ones.
Yes, sir.
What's the lifespan of the arts, music, and instructional materials grant? I think you talked about the learning recovery we had through like 2028. Do you
Yeah.
happen to know
You
what
know,
the spend,
it's either
whatever the
27 or
spend date is
28.
for that?
26.
26?
It's
Thank you very much,
26.
Elizabeth. Okay.
I knew that off the top of my head, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right. Okay. Thank
On Bill's point, so that's through 26, right?
Correct.
Not very far down the road.
No.
So that could actually go away.
Oh, it goes away completely.
Well, I mean, if it's not renewed or,
Correct.
It
Correct.
won't be renewed.
okay.
Yeah, it will not
To
be.
be clear, that will not be renewed. That is a one-time, that was given to us because they had a surplus. It's one-time funds.
So
So when it's
we
gone, it's gone, and then we just have Prop 28. That's ongoing.
got it. Okay. So that's, yeah, so that's 2% of our budget. We have 60 million bucks.
Big number.
That's a big loss.
Yeah, and that was the main reason for me wanting to, because I wanted to figure out, you take one look at the MYP and you go, man, we're deficit spending, right? And so I wanted, in MYP, I mean multi-year projection. So I wanted to show a way of, we receive so much one-time money that's restricted that is currently sitting in a fund balance, and then we're going to be forced to spend that down. And it's going to look like for a while that we're deficit spending. But to Bill's point, it's currently sitting in the fund balance, and it's not even kind of free to use for us. We're going to be forced to do it. And so learning recovery emergency block grant, 3.8, that's the big one. That's the one that we're currently planning for. As Jeremy said, you'll have a plan for it. But we recognize there's a lot of things that we need to support at the sites, and we didn't want to just make quick decisions and be completely reactive to everything. We wanted to try to be proactive and get ahead of some of this. So, I mean, if you just do the math on the 3.8 and the 1.3, which is all in revenues this year, that's why you see the 64 million in revenues as opposed to the 60 in the out years.
And what's hard about budgeting? So we get told we're getting something, right? But then they take 6 months to tell us how we're supposed to implement or what the requirements are. So if that learning recovery emergency block grant, we just got told in what, January? When did we get told, Austin? It was recent where we finally understood what it could be spent on, what the plan was moving forward.
Yeah, they released information on that real real late, basically, and the requirements of it. There was another one though that just came out recently that we were like, why is this just now coming out? But I think even the state, because they had such an influx of these restricted programs, was late on what do you want us to do with this and this and this and then, and going down the list. So yeah. So anywho, so that's the restricted fund balance. Are there any questions kind of on restricted fund balance? Okay. So moving on to Cali. I like Cali's budget because it feels like home a little bit. I love Cali's budgets. It is very similar to my old district's budget in that I just understood it front, back, and center. And so, anywho, so in Cali's budget, you see very much something similar, right? That's 16.3 going down to 15.5 because they also received similar restricted programs, right? And they received the learning recovery funds. They received the arts music. They received all those same restricted programs for the most part. There were some of the COVID funds they did not receive just because they were a charter school. So the other thing about Cali that's important to note is we talked about that 3-year ADA or the funded off the prior year. Cali is no matter what always funded off the current year. So, and that's always been since Cali was enacted. It's always been whatever they have in the current year, that's what they're funded off of. So if they have a low ADA percentage, which right now they are low in their ADA percentage, then they get funded off that, and there's no cushion for them. But you can see that beginning fund balance going kind of up throughout the years, and then you can see the excess as well. So yeah. Anywho, so that's the end of this presentation. Are there any questions from the board kind of wrapping it up?
Thank you for your patience in fielding them along the way.
Cool.
No? Okay.
The only comment I would make is that the developments that are proceeding right now
Yes, sir.
are a higher percentage. I think if we keep sending those questionnaires out, I think we can close that gap quicker.
Okay.
And I just a feeling
Yeah.
that I think if we sent out something to all the families, explaining the situation with how the funding and that block granting and not the block granting, but
Yeah.
that I know the unduplicated.
A UPP percentage.
Yeah. I think that, and I appreciate the initiative of you guys going out and doing that. But I think that there's a lot more to get out there that when I grew up, there was kind of I'm going to use the word stigma with folks that were eligible for some extra assistance, and people were resistant to get it because they didn't want the stigma that went along with it. I don't think that's, and I was jealous because we seemed to not qualify for it. And I felt like I was the poorest kid in the school, and they used to get those great meals. And, but I think we might be even closer to where we need to be if we could somehow do some sort of an educational outreach awareness. Maybe we are, but I know that of the developments that are further along in the development stage right now, there's a higher percentage of folks there that might also meet that. And so I think if we can stay on this, which you're doing, but even expand it a little bit, I think that we could yield a good return on that. That is representative of what's really there.
Any comments from the gallery before we bring it back for the board? This is don't sit down yet. This is an action item. Yes, ma'am.
Austin, would you please put up the graph? Yeah. The yellow and blue one. Yeah, I would like to make a comment about math instruction on this graph. I know it's out of context, but if the math department is offering an introduction to statistics course next year for our 9th and 10th grade students. I would recommend that the teacher teaching this course present this graph as what is wrong with this graph and why is it misleading? And I challenge the board to take a look at it as well.
Can I take a guess or no? Okay. Well, my guess is that I should have had the larger block on the left instead of the right to show that it's going down. Is that true?
If you scaled it all the way down to 0, which the numbers represent, all of those lines would be almost level.
That's what I thought you were going after. Because when I first saw that, I was going like, and I'm trying to get my numbers. I want to see that's 128 million, 125 million. That looks like a big gap. And
yeah, it's in
what's
billions.
that? No, I know. What did I say? 1,000? So if you're having buildings, I think what your point is if you went all the way from 0 and you took it all the way up, the differential isn't that much. But it still is a lot.
Okay. Thank you. Bringing it back for the board. This is an approval item. I just had one comment when I was looking. I remember when I got on the board, we were like a 50 million and some change operation with 64 million for the district plus another 16 for Cali. We're an $80 million a year operation now, which to me is a big, big number. I'm not sure where all this new revenue sort of snuck in over time, but anyway, that's serious. And it looks like Ms. Robertson wants to come and talk. Yes, ma'am.
Actually for Austin, but no, I don't need a.
See how he wanted to get rid of that clicker?
I don't need a clicker, but what I wanted to ask Austin, so the title of arts, music, and instructional materials is actually very, very, very misleading. Austin, could you maybe speak to some of the things that we are spending that block grant on? Because it's
Absolutely.
not necessarily arts, music, and instructional materials.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elizabeth. So one of the things about the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant, the history on it was last year it was that $7 billion discretionary block grant, if you guys remember. And they basically were going to give us, in our calculations, it was roughly 6.3 million, and just whatever the heck you want to spend it on, go for it. And then the governor just pulled a fast one a little bit, and he split it up into two. He split it up into the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant. Gosh, these names are long. And then the learning recovery funds. So those were part of that initial big block grant that he was going to give last year. He made the learning recovery funds much more specific. Both of them are going to have a plan approved by the board. But the arts, music, and instructional materials, they lined out very specific items, but basically said you can use it on whatever you want. But the initial intent of the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant was actually used for pension relief. So they knew that pension costs were going to continue to go up in the out years. And that was one of the things that they lined out specifically underneath the title, that it was intended to be able to use for those purposes. So thank you, Elizabeth. And healthcare costs as
The
well.
politics behind that were that they forgot that they should have given us pension relief and said, well, we'll just plug it there.
So of that 1.3-ish now, what portion of that is allocated in our district to healthcare and pension
What's the
relief?
breakdown of those funds?
Yeah.
Well,
just as a ballpark, if you know.
No, good question. So it's not that we're required to do that. So, we're working with Elizabeth on developing a plan on how we want to do it as a district. So they still gave the local
Okay,
board
all right.
authority on
We
it.
have
Yeah.
a future agenda item here shortly about that. Okay. With that, we will bring it back to the board. Unless there are any other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion for approval. And thank you for that comprehensive report, Austin, of our second interim budget report.
I do got one.
Go.
Austin, I don't know if you can answer this, or Jeremy, but I've kind of wondered about this. Why is the state, if we have pension shortfalls, right? Why are they taking the money, sending it to the district, and then having the district send it back in the pension? Why don't they just take that money and shore it up instead of washing it through the district? I don't understand why.
No, good question.
And you may not know the answer. I didn't ask.
Well, I know the answer. The answer is you.
Me?
Yeah, they want communities to have local decision making based off of certain areas. So there's ed code around, and there's more than just ed code. Even more so than that, there's actually a fund that no one even knows about. We receive money at the state level. So the state level in STRS does the same thing. It's called STRS on behalf. And so basically whenever the state, because STRS and PERS operate a little bit differently. So PERS rates can just go up without anyone approving anything. The STRS, it actually has to go through like a governing body. And I'm not a full expert on this, but it has to be approved by a governing body of some sort. And so when that governing body, they can choose to or not choose to increase the employer rates at the local level. But if they make an increase at the state level, we actually still account for it in our budget. And so it's just something that never gets talked about, because usually at the beginning of the year, I get a list of, this is how much we're going to spend for you. So you just book revenue and then you also book expenditures for it. That's it. But for the PERS, no matter what, they want it to be the local judicial, like it's part of your budget, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes it sound like it's our decision, but it's not our decision. They're taking it out, right?
So Rich, you were there when I was speaking to the legislators. And if you remember, Senator McGuire and I had a little bit of a quarrel over this because I was a proponent of giving us STRS and PERS relief. And he said, we did. It's within this grant. And I said, no, that's not the same thing. And he said, well, I feel like we can't win because last year we gave it to you specifically, and this year we're giving you more control, and you're still complaining, I believe was his statement to me. So that's all I can give to you in terms of what their thought process is.
Right. So maybe there's a disconnect. Maybe our elected folks think they're giving us something, and they really believe that. But with it comes, well, it's like you were saying earlier, they gave us all this money, and then 3 months later, they gave us all the strings that were attached to it. So anyhow, I just, it's one of the things that just don't make sense to me on how you budget, how you do things. And I didn't know if there was something behind the curtain of why they're doing that, and why it was fresh on my mind. I wanted to ask because it's something that's come up 2 or 3 cycles, and I keep thinking that I forget to ask you about it. But so thank you for letting me.
Okay, good.
And Rich,
if there are no other questions from the board, I would entertain a motion then to approve the second interim financial report.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Trustee Ahmad. Thank you, Trustee Lopez. Preferential first voting member, student
Be wise.
Trustee Caligari over to the left.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 1 + 5, 0. Marvelous. Thank you so much. We are over the hump and going down the curve here. Now we will move on to 5.5, which is a public hearing on the district's initial proposal for contract negotiations with the Windsor District Educators Association. That would be Superintendent Decker.
I mean, the title essentially explains what it is. There's
Yep.
not much for me to say. So we're required to have a public hearing, and then we close it, and then hopefully we adopt this, and then it allows us to we actually have a session set up March 16th, I believe, and it allows us to then negotiate with our unit.
So I will call the public hearing open on item 5.5. If you could share with the Superintendent Decker, what are those opener proposals that we have coming from the district office and the board?
And just so the process is, both of us have proposals for each other, right? So we call this sun shining, and it means letting each other know what we want to talk about. So what we put on was wages, hours, retirement, full inclusion, and then we also have stipends on there. And within that, we have other things that we want to talk about. And you could do this lots of different ways. We actually provide a little bit more detail than some districts. Some districts just open the articles. We did the articles and then kind of explained what else.
Have we received a request yet from the WDEA?
We have. You guys have approved.
Right.
Yes, you've
Okay.
approved last month.
Just
Yeah.
remind us what were the openers that came from the union?
Oh, I would
If
have
we
to go
remember.
and look back. I mean,
Okay,
of
if you knew,
course-
okay, I
yeah.
thought.
Of course, we're talking wages,
Right.
for both of us. We had class size. I know class size was in there. Susanna, if you remember, and you can help me, I can't remember all of them. Class size for sure was in there. I know that much. Health and welfare, teaching conditions. That was the other one.
Okay.
It was class size and teaching
Thank you.
conditions.
Okay. So at this point, if there is any other feedback that the public would like to give in this public hearing about, and it could be just questions as well, items for the district to put on for our proposal for issues to be covered in contract negotiations with the upcoming negotiations for a new memorandum of understanding with our teachers union. That was a mouthful.
You said it well.
Well, and I'm closing the public hearing. Hearing no input. Thank you so much. We will, do we need to entertain a motion now under 5.6 for approving that proposal for contract negotiations? There was no public comment to alter the proposal we received from Superintendent Decker. Any other additional comments you'd like to give about that? Okay, then we will entertain a motion for 5.6 for approval of the district's proposal. No, 5.5 was our public hearing, which we have held open. I tried to solicit something from, Ahmad Volume 2, but she didn't come up.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve
Okay,
the contract.
the motion is made by Trustee Corgano. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you from Malinelli. Preferential voter. All those in favor of our union negotiating proposal?
Aye.
He would suggest that. All of the trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? That would go at a 1-5 and 0. Okay, now going to 5.7. That is consideration of creating an ad hoc committee for development of an updated strategic arts plan. Are you
Again,
starting
that's
that?
self-explanatory. So we know that we have Prop 28 funds that are coming and they're going to be ongoing. And so we've started the process with Elizabeth and staff to really look at what our offerings are and start the development of a strategic plan, because ours has run out, right? It was done, 2 years ago, really. Well, but the last action was done 2 years ago. There was nothing beyond that year. So we know we need to update that. Well, it's not a requirement, right? This is not a requirement that a district does this, but we believe that it's important in our district to develop a strategic arts plan and have it be updated, each cycle. So the idea is we are going to do this work and to create an ad hoc committee where we have board representation to be a part of this work. So that's what the item is to create the ad hoc.
And in our board packet was the 13 or 15 pages of the 2016, 2017, whatever it is, strategic arts plan that was adopted and enacted. And so I think from the first question is any comments or questions from the board? Is this a priority that the board would like to continue and have staff? We have Elizabeth Robertson as our VAPA facilitator. There has been some early work on this, but I'd be interested to hear from my fellow trustees. And then if there are questions or perhaps comments from Superintendent Decker about sort of the timing of this. And, if we were going to revisit this, do we have aspirational goals of, do we finish it this calendar year, or how that would work? The action item is whether we are going to appoint we can't have more than 2 trustees on an ad hoc, to basically be the liaisons, which is frequently helpful as we have stakeholder outreach and whatnot. Not that other trustees could not be involved as our interest or availability is there. So what say my fellow trustees about this as a notion? Do we want to revisit our strategic arts plan? Because that's really the threshold item. Yes, okay, I'm seeing heads nod.
Yes.
Preferential voter on my left. Okay, it seems like a universal consensus. Do you have a sense in your work, and thank you, Elizabeth, who came up? Yeah.
Just for historical,
Yes.
make sure this was developed when we had that initial grant, right?
No, it was developed before the initial grant.
Okay.
A reason that we were able to get a $1.9 million I Aspire grant, in my view, is we had a strategic arts plan.
Because we had it ready to go.
And we could say, we are ready to do this. We subsequently have been involved in, how much is that, 3 or 4 million. And one of the challenges we had for that larger grant is we simply did not have the unduplicated count. We did not have demographics in our district that met that large federal grant. And so we partnered, I know a principal partner was, we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club. amongst others, right? And there were some other districts that came on board so that by an economy of scale, we were able to get the correct mix of partners and demographics. But I think, again, that came largely because we had planned really before there was money. There was an identification of a need. I had gone over to Napa back in the day with Allison Frenzel, who was sort of the arts fanatic and dance teacher, and Napa was doing a plan. And we thought, well, why don't we do a plan? And do we got to have a plan? Well, if we only had money, we'd do a plan. And people said, no, you got it wrong. Have a plan and the money will come. And so that is where this came from. That I was at an event Tuesday night, I think it was, there was an arts education summit. And again, our district was called out favorably about get a plan if you're interested in significant, multi-million dollar money, because that's how you'll get it, right? And I'm a firm believer that it's something we should do, as you might be able to tell. So because we have some infusion of money now with Prop 28, we have that 1.3 million that we can have some flexibility, it sounds like, where it's going to get spent. That's a fixed limited pot, the 500,000 and whatever it is for Prop 28s every year. So looking at how we allocate that money, I will tell you, Elizabeth has done a brilliant job in capturing, and maybe we'll see this next month or in May, what our baseline level of effort is, right? How many hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars are we spending right now on visual and performing arts, from certificated teachers to visiting artists to other kinds of things. So I don't know.
So I just want to make a comment. So I want to say that I'm very much in favor of this because obviously I think everyone knows, at least on this board, that I'm a big, proponent of the arts. But my main comment that I want to say is that I know it will be a discussion that will go on for some time about, how the money is spent on this. But I do think an important piece of the discussion should be diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of this, because I read this and I didn't really see it reflected in the language that, for example, we should have diversity of, if we decide to have teaching artists, or diversity of the types of activities, right? Because it really wasn't connected to a cultural context. Which I think is important because I feel like this programming should really reflect the demographic of the students that we have. So as an example of this, it would be, will we incorporate ballet folklorico? Will we incorporate activities in bilingual languages? So to have a very diverse and robust program is important.
I think she just nominated herself.
I think
is what
so.
I just heard.
Second.
I totally agree. I was kind of thinking something along similar lines, but a little bit different, just in and for our ad hoc committee as you go forward, just in terms of art programming, but also just arts as part of our traditions too, and performance. I think about like Cali, how and kind of some things have kind of fizzled out after the pandemic. We used to do performances and school-wide, and that was a long-standing tradition. And then it became just first through fourth grade, and my kids did it, and now it's kind of not happening anymore. So, but I think that is arts. Like that was an introduction to the arts. So thinking through not just, guitar lessons and painting classes, but also what are we doing school-wide, grade level, kind of almost tied to our multi-tiered systems of support process, because they complement each other. And I think that it becomes more lasting if we really think of it as something that's integral.
And also, beyond Latino students, I know we have diversity in our students. We have Black students, we have Indigenous students. I think one of the things maybe a lot of people don't know is that when you do, for example, restorative justice circles, that actually comes from an Indigenous tradition from way before the Spanish came, to Latin America and Mexico. So it's an ancient tradition. So I think we just need to bring more awareness to culture and diversity.
One other aside from sort of access to engagement, not particularly on a demographic, but we found in looking when we were developing this strategic art plan that some of the least engaged students that we had and their families were students who were either special education students or that were in certain kinds of intervention programs. So if their electives were taking up in English or math tutoring, for example, their proportional involved, just as that category of students slice were woefully underrepresented. So I think and these are all great things, and I would love to see a plan that is hugely aspirational. I will tell you, when we did this one, we used an outside consultant who said he had never seen a plan that was this deep of a dive and had so many things. There's no way you can ever do all these things, and that's great, because now you have an off-the-shelf set of possibilities that can be tapped into, as opposed to, well, let's think about the lowest common denominator and the lowest hanging fruit. So I would hope that we have an aspirational plan component of it too. Let me just ask, we can have two. I'm going to be very interested and involved in the periphery, but I do not want to take a seat on the ad hoc. I was on it before. I will have a voice and be around and participate in stakeholder groups, but sounds as if Malinelli is interested. Is there another trustee who would like to throw their name in? We can only have two on this ad hoc.
I'm interested. To Bill, to your point, when I was younger, and Malinelli's, we took ballroom dancing, and I'm going to bring it up next month when we talk about some other things about what we learned in there. But it wasn't just ballroom dancing; it was all kinds of. Why are they laughing? Anyhow,
only because he swears, but just saying. Go ahead, Richard. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But but with that dancing, they introduced all kinds of other dances that we picked up from all these other cultures, and it was really exciting. And honestly, I didn't appreciate it at the time as a teenager, but then when I got to college and I met girls, I'm back at the university, I'm meeting girls from other countries, and when I knew how to dance and the ways that they danced, it was such a hit.
You were a multicultural ambassador. That's what you meant to say.
I was actually. They used to call them the young ambassadors at the school I went to. But
they did.
But anyhow, so Malinelli, I know, is blown away because she had no idea I knew what 2 different feet were for. But yeah, I'd like to be a part of this, because in addition to music, I think that dance, that if we could incorporate dance into this as well, I think it could reach a lot of the goals that you're thinking about too.
I will tell you, I was having breakfast with Malinelli, and I believe they are still somewhere. We have 2 pottery kilns, or at least we used to. One is tucked behind Mr. Beal's room in room M, and somewhere hidden in the bowels of the middle school. And we used to apparently throw clay. And that's the kind of thing to say, just as a benchmark to say, gosh, what other kind of things can we do, should we do, are we already doing? Is there already a passion and an interest by our students, their families, our community partners to do these things? And I'll tell you, when you start to talk about this, people are stunned by the possibilities. So I'm excited.
So if
you're in,
I would like to. If
there
somebody else is not.
By consensus, you can come back from wherever you're going to school to participate in the plan over summer and in the fall. We'll do that by acclamation. I think we will move forward with a strategic plan. And we now know 6 figures, nearly 7 figures worth of money on the table, at least to look at. And we will have Rich and Malinelli be our ad hoc committee. And I would imagine that we will have you all start. That's Elizabeth Robertson. If you have not met her before, she is our VAPA facilitator for the district. And hopefully have a sort of an update, maybe a roadmap, some timing, scheduling, et cetera, when we meet in April. One of the things that I see is, if we're going to assess where we are, what trajectory changes, resource allocations, needs, opportunities, threats are there when we get to our May and June budget decisions, right? That this is not, in my mind, in 25, 26 or 26, 27, boy, we're going to be on it. I think there's the opportunity with, an infusion of Prop 28 money coming in July. What might we do, right?
Will we have the 2 positions related to VAPA by then?
2 positions.
I thought there was 2 positions that we were talking about. No?
No, I think those were the MTSS. Those are.
Oh, okay. I was confused. I thought it also was for this, but sorry.
No. No, but this will serve dual purposes, right? Because we have to plan for Prop 28. We implement next year.
Right.
And then also the aspirational part of this. So I think that we'll talk, we've done some work, and what we focused on is what we have. It hasn't been aspirational
right
yet. Yeah. So we really wanted to get a baseline and develop kind of the format for how we're going to do this. So,
And I would tell you, Jeremy and I, end of last week, I think it was, whatever day it was, maybe Monday, but yeah, last Thursday or Friday, looked at Elizabeth's work. And I think you two are going to be stunned. And I think when it comes back to the board, collectively, the community go, oh my goodness, look at all this good work. And that's just to simply get the snapshot of the baseline. Where are we? What are we doing? And that sort of validate that for the future, doing some more of that, maybe retargeting some other stuff. And this is really exciting to me. I will tell you, I am a firm believer. I love math. I love science. Tom Scott, anybody who knows who's a jazz fan, Tom Scott's like the Mick Jagger of playing saxophone. Tom Scott came up from LA to this arts summit on Tuesday night, and he said, the traditional academic subjects of math and science and English languages, if you will, are for the head, and arts are for your soul and your heart. And really, while all the and arts is a core curriculum element, it's part of the ed code. We have to teach it. It's not an enrichment subject. And so this seems to me, I know I'm going to get evangelical about it, is how do we, how do we put that to light? How do we put teeth and feet underneath that? And how do we get that exposure for every student in every classroom in a culturally relevant way and a stretching way? Because it's doable. It is. It's doable. It is, to my mind, always been not money. It's culture. It's do we decide this is important, right? One of them is sitting out there in Heather and coming, but it's do we do it, right? When we have more money, so many places ask how we did it in Windsor. We just had the money. We could really start. And you plan, in my view, to start a pivot on where we are and if it's important. Because I think the community would come out in spades with that new outside money if we could identify, here's how it would impact students, because people can remember this.
Also, one of the ideas that we were chatting about with
Mhm.
Bill is that I used to be the representative on the Public Arts Commission for my area, and I don't know if there's enough collaboration happening because I don't recall a lot of conversation when I was there, with the schools as far as what joint projects we could do with the town and also our school district. So I don't know, for example, if you all have seen, if you drive to Windsor High School and you see these banners hanging around the high school that look like children drew them, it's because we had an art contest. And I was really, really proud of that because I just feel that it really boosted the confidence of the children who won those designs that were able to be put up on the banners. So I just love that we were able to have that connection, with students in our schools. But it was like one of the few projects that we did together. Yes.
Oh, must come here. That's all right. We want to hear you. You'll be on the video. And Elizabeth was there to see Tom Scott play the saxophone.
I
It like
was,
seeing
and I got
Jesus.
to also speak about Prop 28.
Yes.
Which was fun. I just wanted to say, because Jeremy doesn't have this information, so I wanted to tell you this. I actually started a conversation with a few members of the Public Arts Commission about looking into finding entry points with having collaboration between the Public Arts Commission and our schools. So we just started the conversation, and I'm really excited about it.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
So by acclamation, we will say we have created an ad hoc. It's Carnation and Lopez, and you guys get together. We'll look forward to getting sort of a snapshot with a schedule. Yeah. God, if you could only hear the sidebar conversations up here. Okay. Before we go to meeting adjournment under 6.1, let's talk about future board items. Thank you for reserving that spot. Some of you actually were here back in public comment. I'll just start. I mean, it was an interesting 1-2 of 5 students from Brooks saying this is great and 2 families from Brooks saying this is not so good there. So I don't know the way to maybe make the I'll just say that, and I don't know what that means or how we bundle that from MTSS or social emotional. I'm sort of surprised when I heard, I was mentioning to Paul when we took the break, that if we're going to have circles and restorative justice, and that is used at some schools, it seems to me maybe a continuity of that program for all of our students as they come through the district, not necessarily one kind, but if they show up as a ninth grader and somebody's going to do some weird circle thing in class, ideal if it's effective, maybe they've at least seen this in elementary experiences or the middle school experiences. I don't know what takeaways do my colleagues have from what we heard in public comment, not only just from on the Brooks dichotomy. I wrote dichotomy on my notes to say what an interesting thing. Those were two quite different perspectives. And I'll presume they're all valid. I mean, they're very real for those people. But also on the issue, and thank you so much for our students who came, and I appreciate Mayor Reynosa coming, that while we're doing well, where are we on evaluating sort of the safety and things? And yes, ma'am, you were going to speak.
Yeah, so I'll go. We didn't do our board member report section.
Oh, yes.
And so I'll do a quickly now just because it was relevant to that topic and just kind of the conversations about safety. So I wanted to let you all know that I attended in mid-February now, an event. It was called Commitment to Law Enforcement Equity. It was put on by Los Cien, and there were about 200 people there. It was very well attended, lots of community leaders. And so it was a panel with the former Santa Rosa Mayor, Ernesto Olivares, Sheriff Ingram, DA, our district attorney, newly elected, Carlo Rodriguez, and Santa Rosa Police Chief Cregan. And it was a wide-ranging discussion on anything from unhoused people to mental health and kind of the policing and the role in mental health treatment, which is actually plays a very large role in Sonoma County in treating mental health issues. But they also touched on schools. And so there was several parts of that conversation, but the part that I wanted to highlight here was that they highlighted our student resource officer program here in Windsor as kind of a model for the county. Our school district was the only one that was really called out as having a program that they really felt was a model that provided a model for students to see a law enforcement officer in their day-to-day lives in a positive way, and that they felt was very, just to summarize, that they felt created a safer environment for students to have that connection on campus. So I just wanted you all to know that that was called out. And Chief Rash was there and he kind of got some recognition. So it was a nice moment for Windsor and our schools.
Anything else for go to the order again is what takeaways from, and you sort of saved that, we put a pin in that from your comment, Rich, and what were you thinking we would talk about now at the end here?
I'm glad you used the word dichotomy because, don't ask me to spell it. I just can say it. It was so refreshing to see those young kids. And I say young kids, yet their poise was poise is the word I want to use. It was good. And it really, I can't tell if I'm getting, because I'm a grandpa now, if that stuff is sweeter than it was when I was a younger guy. I don't know. I can't tell. But it was just great. Maybe I just appreciate it more. And it was always there. But the poise of those kids and the courage for some of them, it was just so refreshing. But then, they'll take that was good. But then the things that the parents and some folks that brought up, right? At the same time, so you can have both. The things that the parents brought up, I kind of read some of the stuff and I'm going, I agree with them completely. But I don't want to discuss that right now. I want to get into it and develop it, get more feedback from other parents. But there are things that I'm just me. Superficially, I don't have any history. I just found out about this tonight. I don't agree with the approach that we might be taking there and the remedies. And I want to discuss amongst us and with the public why I think we should be doing things a little bit different. Just a little teaser. Often we get things from kids where kids are suspended. Maybe we hear things about kids are up for expulsions and things because kids don't learn early on where the boundaries are. And I've used this as an example. How do you know if a joke is a good joke or a bad joke? Well, sometimes you tell your friends, and your friends will tell you, "Oh, dude, that was terrible. You can't say stuff like that." And you go, "What was wrong with that?" And somebody will tell you. You might think something's funny, and your friends say, "Oh, that's not funny." So you learn. You incrementally, as you grow up, you hear and you get little boundaries of, you can't say that. Hey, you can't say this to that girl. That's wrong. Where are the kids supposed to learn these things if they don't learn at the young age? For us to just say, "Hey, nope, separation," you don't learn, you don't have any boundaries. And what a boundary means is that sometimes you step over a boundary a little bit, an incremental amount, and then you get, you get rebuffed, however that is, and you go, "Oh, I guess I won't." For example, young man goes up and asks a girl out on a date. He says, "What?" No, I'm just, and he's inappropriate. The girl says, "No, I'm not going out." And then you find, "Man, I asked her out. She said no." "Well, why?" "I said this." "Are you crazy? You can't say that to a girl." That's how you learn as you're growing up. I can't be that old that things have changed that much. Maybe I am, but I don't think so. And so I think that I think we might have went further than we're supposed to, or further than we need to, with stuff at Brooks. And I want to look at that and discuss it and get feedback from parents and from everybody to kind of get on that same page, because we maybe have 50 different opinions, but somewhere in there I think is the right thing. And again, this is new. I don't have any background on why that came up. So that's why I'd like to bring it up, so we could get the history, find out what's been going on. So why we find out. I mean, case in point, I read one of the things that says, kids are getting flat tires. And for those who don't know what that means, if somebody steps on the back of your shoe and it's a flat tire. If you haven't had one, you haven't lived. And so anyhow, but I don't know that I believe that getting a flat tire or giving a flat tire is anyhow. So
Can I respond?
Let me, but
Oh, I'm sorry,
if
Bill.
you
Go
could
ahead.
just respond, Jeremy, in the context is there time to
That's
wait
what I wanna
until
talk
our
to.
next meeting to address and take a deeper dive on this, right?
That's what I
Again,
wanna talk about,
I
Bill.
appreciate so much the passion and that young fellow who came up and talked. Literally, we heard about this at about 5:10 tonight when we were over there. Again, nothing against anybody. And so I think that's why it's somewhat of a shame, or maybe it's good that the season for a few hours before we talk about it. So I'd just be interested, because to me, if there's an urgency, there's an urgency. If there's clarification or whatever, that may be something that doesn't weather well. We're doing our meeting a week early. So we're not meeting again for a regular meeting for 5 more weeks. So
That's
in
what I
that
want-
context, that's the point I want to just give a temporal context to
That's
it, if
my
you would, please.
context
Yes,
too.
sir.
So I think we're talking about two things: communication versus policy, right? So you don't agree with certain ideas. This wasn't a policy. This was a communication of, some decisions that a principal made. Now, we are talking policy with regard to discipline, behavior, and that's going to come in months probably, though, because it takes time to develop these things, and we are looking at the elementary level. That's going to come to you eventually. That's where we would talk about, well, why are we giving detention for this thing? Now, this to me was more of a communication issue. I found out late too, right? So this was communication, because there was it felt like misunderstanding to me. I think this is critical to get on in the next couple of days. So I'm happy to bring it back. I just don't know what we're going to accomplish with regard to those public comments, because it's immediate within the next couple of days that I think that we need to communicate with families and explain the why behind it, and maybe some of the misunderstandings of the kids.
I'm looking at the paper that was printed. Yeah, so this, what's that? Oh, this was generated by
Annette,
right. And so so if I don't agree with everything that's written in here, how do we address that?
you would do it from a policy standpoint. If we're doing things properly,
Right, that's what
it
I'm-
would be policy. None of this is found in policy except when we get to like our discipline protocols for suspension, really. Anything before suspension, a lot of that is controlled at the school site. So that's what I'm saying. We'll get there, but it's going to take time.
So that's my point. So this went out from our school district, right?
Sir.
Okay, so this is official right now until it's not. So I just want to read one little part. It says, we are asking students to refrain from physical contact during unstructured times before and after school while on campus, snack, lunch, and recesses. In our classrooms, understandings, blah, blah, blah. So anyhow, sounds like policy.
But understood. It's not policy. It's
And
because
it's-
there are issues at the school site. But
Right.
also at the end, if you notice, or in the parentheses, it does state, we're not saying you can't hold hands or hug. That's what I read. Rich, you got to remember, I read this just before you guys came today, right? And I read that and I said, okay, this seems reasonable.
So what I would suggest is rather than us trying to address policy, sort of getting the deep dive in the background, giving some direction, is perhaps Jeremy looks into this, gets back to us. If we need to then think we have a special meeting, which I think may be a bit micromanaging, may not, I don't know. But I think we need to get some feedback in the next day or two. I mean, tomorrow is Friday. So, and I can work with Jeremy, he can push that out to all of us. That would not be a serial meeting when and again, it's not a reply all, to kind of get a sense of the answer to some of these questions. I mean, clearly I can tell you are concerned. There were parents that were concerned. I think there may be differences of opinion, or I don't want to even say that the merits of what one person said or didn't say. I do think there is some background that we need to have the folks over here who get the big money running the show for us to sort of give us that feedback, and then say by middle of by middle of next week we can assess. Look, does there need to be a something somewhere with some people that may or may not include us? I don't know. Steph, yeah.
Just wanted to add that we have a policy committee meeting coming up in early April. So if the board had feedback to provide to Jeremy, we could potentially consider that and implement it at that meeting if we needed to do that.
And it'd be interesting, for example, is this consistent with or not consistent with or in alignment with some very broad language that may be in some policies? I don't know. I don't know.
And I don't either. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because, one of the things that I think is important, and just want to wrap this up because this is not the discussion. I wanted just to bring it up so we can have that discussion, is what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what's policy, what's not policy. I don't like it when, and I'm gonna call these surprises. It's not a surprise. I don't think anybody did anything nefarious, sneaky, underhand, or anything like that. I think all intentions are good. But some people, our sensitivity levels are all different. And I think as a school, as a policy, we need to have our sensitivity levels need to be discussed and be pretty uniform. And sometimes somebody might think our policy might be a little bit stricter. Some people might see that same policy as a little bit looser. Maybe you find that happy medium right in the middle is kind of maybe where you're supposed to be. But nonetheless, when I saw this, I was like going, you know what? I don't agree personally with some of this stuff, because I think we're eliminating learning experiences for kids to learn at that young age of what's appropriate and inappropriate. So that way they are better adults, which is what we're supposed to be trying to do. So that's the whole.
Okay, thank you for very much. I'm glad we had that. Do you have what you need to sort of look into this a little bit? And I will work with Jeremy early next week and what he can sort of gather to push out, and we can decide. I tell you, I appreciate very much when we get to the end of our meetings, even when it's late, we sort of look and say, hey, what are some things we need to circle back around and pay attention to that we're thinking about? I think that helps us keep momentum going and not get stale. I know we have a bunch of other things that are sort of on our parking lot. I think we've gone almost to 10 o'clock and we started right at 5 across the street. What I'd like to do is entertain a motion to adjourn. I do think we need to take a look at those pending items and see how we weave those in. Some of those, I think, are going to get into some of our strategic planning goals and things like when we have some time in the summer, when we get together on a more deliberate thing. But we can talk about those. So please rest assured they don't go on that list on that parking lot and stay there, right, without action or being revisited. Anything else for the good of the order for the lucky few that have name tags that look at us? Everybody had a speak and roll today except for Jen. Well done. Okay. Well, with that, I will just say we'll go ahead and adjourn. I won't even take a motion. I'll just say thank you very much, everyone. God bless you. Thank you for living in Windsor. I'm proud of us. Yeah. That's good or not? Amen. We're gonna feel like church. Well, what happened to it? Oh, well.
You